Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 23rd, 2022 regular meeting of the Sachem Board of Education. If everyone can please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then remain standing for a moment of silence for all of our servicemen and women stationed around the globe protecting our freedoms. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to pass the meeting over to Dr. Pelletieri for his superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Piccirillo. I would like immediately to jump in to see some of our students we have next door, our students from Simia and LIFSA, and some recognitions that we have planned.
Thank you. Yep, we've got a big group. It was 50 and we have 36 students here, so that's really, really great. My name is George Maschio. I'm one of the chair people for music in Sachem, and we're going to hand these out to our excellent musicians. Okay, when you guys come up, continue across. Okay, great. Sophia Ariza. Jill Bischoff. Sophia DeLuca. Sienna Gaffarian. Hannah Hageman. Thank you. Tyler Gawarecki. Noel Handler. Kyle Lopalato. Kyle Lopalato should be next. Yep. Thank you, Kyle. You could skip that one. Avery Malfatone. Evan Pahanik. Alexi Pesh. Emma Ponticelli. Looks like I think we lost our order. Chloe Cisak. There we go. Yeah, I'm looking for faces I just met. Jigar Shah. Ben Sinacor. Rachel Steffens. Rebecca Steffens. Ved Talsania. Liana Tatum. And Danielle White. Sure. So before we take a picture, the two groups that we're recognizing tonight are students that were selected for SCMEA, which is a Suffolk County, basically like an all-star band for their age group. 5th and 6th graders traveled to rehearsals and performed a concert. They're selected for a band, chorus, and orchestra. So it's a really great honor. As well, we're going to recognize students who were chosen for LISFA, which is a string-only festival. And that is as well for students in their age group, kind of like an all-star ensemble. It goes 5th to 6th, 7th and 8th, 9th and 10th, and then 11th and 12th does one as well. So those are the students you're seeing tonight, some of our best young musicians. Now we're going to present to LISFA students. Okay, this is Nolan Aylward, Sarah Becker, skip these two. Zachary Cuvier, Sophia Fidel, Sophia Grisalfi, Audrey Hackinson, Gianna Kamor, Dilana Kosiba, Annabelle Ramsden, Kyle Simoes, Noah Sontag, Aiden Staby, Elena Tramontana, Emily Wells, and Tiffany White.
Thank you guys for coming.
These are very serious musicians, right? They all were very serious when I tried to say something nice to them or smile at them or give them a pound. And look how serious they are now, right? You guys can go. Go ahead. Find your moms and dads and family and everyone. Thank you so much. We're very proud of you guys. Have a good night, everyone.
Yes, he's in the military.
They had two. I saw the one girl's face. I was like, wait a second. I just saw you go by. Yeah.
I remember being in this room with my daughter. She was like,
Oh, that's awesome.
and now she's
What was she? What had she?
she's a flautist, and she kept it. She's a senior. She still plays.
It's fantastic. Very nice. This guy's taking a picture of the certificate to send to his wife, I guess, or someone. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue. I just want to recognize one of the finest basketball players to ever go through Sachem himself, Mr. Kevin Tuffer, our principal down at Waverly, county champion, right? Went to state. Only, that's what Mr. Piccarello just said, only county championship in basketball in the history of Sachem. Right there. Power forward. Oh, no, you didn't. I'm sure you didn't. I'm sure you didn't. Good to see you, Mr. Tuffer. Of course, of course. Okay, we're going to continue on now. I'm going to ask Miss Wendy Parente to come up. Wendy, are you here? Here she is. So, Wendy, do me a favor. Sit right there. I'm going to grill you for 5 minutes. All right? I'm not going to. But yeah, come on up here. So, Wendy, you were chosen a New York State Master Teacher this year. Incredible. So you saw our pride in our students and our arts program and music, and we are incredibly proud of you as well. Can you just tell us just a brief snippet of what is this program and why is it such an honor for Sachem for you to be here and be a part of that? Go ahead.
Oh, great.
Remember, there's a microphone, there's a camera there. So
I thank you for that added pressure. I appreciate that.
Look, everyone is smiling.
So the New York State Master Teacher Program is a network of passionate educators that are dedicated to networking and being part of a group that collaborates to best practices and in the area of STEM. So
What's the area of STEM? Not everyone's going to know.
I teach mathematics.
Right, so science,
Yes.
technology, engineering.
Correct.
Mathematics.
Hmm.
Thank you so much. We're so proud of you.
Thank you.
This certificate from the Board of Education, I proudly recognize as Wendy Parente being chosen New York State Master Teacher Program 21-22. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we expect you're going to be able to do some professional development with us and share with your peers and colleagues across the district.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Can we take a picture with her?
Yeah, please. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Picture. Oh,
Can we come on that?
Sean, do you mind?
We're gonna walk around.
Yeah, let's walk around. Let's go around.
Lights, camera, action.
We're going to move right into our budget presentation. Mr. O'Keefe.
All right, good evening, everyone. This is Budget Development Workshop number 5. It would typically be the end of the series, but we are still at a point in the budget development process where we have not quite actually balanced both budgets. So I'm just going to go over a couple of brief things this evening, and then we'll do a little bit more exploring on the 13th when we come back to adopted budget. So the timeline, as it states here, obviously this is the 5th meeting. April 13th is our next board meeting. It's also when the board will formally adopt the budget. We have a formal budget hearing on May 4th, and then the budget vote is on May 17th. So I just give you a couple of things we recap on. Again, I know obviously at home you can't really see this. Even sitting in the audience, it might be difficult. Presentation will be up on the website tomorrow, so certainly take some time to take a look at it. This slide here represents our current projected revenue for the 22-23 year school year. So looking at the table, the first 3 columns as you start the table are the actual revenues received in each of those categories for the 18-19, 19-20, and 20-21 school years. Second to last column is our current year budget, the 21-22 revenue budget, and the last column on the far right is the proposed budget for 22-23. Quite a number of categories here, but there's really only 2 that matter. Up on top is our tax levy and our STAR proceeds, which right now are projected at about $203 million. That's a 2.07% tax levy increase. And down towards the bottom, our state aid that's projected for next year. The other categories all represent various miscellaneous revenues, which are meaningful, but they're not a large portion of the revenue stream for the district. So if you look to the bottom, you see current projected revenue of about $243.9 million, just shy of 244. That'd be a little over a $3.5 million increase, but that will only allow the budget to grow by 1.04%. So you might first say, Mr. O'Keefe, you just said that the property tax levy is going up 2%. You've said in previous presentations the state aid is going up 2%. Well, how if most of your revenue is going up 2% is the budget not going up 2%? And the simple answer to that is, if you remember when we built last year's budget, we did appropriate $3.4 million from fund balance to balance last year's budget. So basically 1% of this year's budget is balanced with fund balance. So without taking that into consideration at this moment, our budget can only grow by 1%. Just to recap fund balance and reserves, and again, difficult to see. This is on the website. I did this presentation when we first started back in January. I'd just like to remind everyone where we are. We have current fund balance of a little over $60 million. Again, the table reads left to right, going back to 2015 and moving forward to 2020 on the far right-hand side. Fund balance is not just one bucket of money. There are specific reserves where money is restricted to the specific categories that it's held in. You have a retirement reserve for the employees' retirement system. You have a teacher's retirement system. Those are for contributions the district must make on behalf of the employees. We have a workers' compensation reserve for workers' compensation costs. We are self-funded, so we do pay for all of the claims that are levied against the district. You have an employee benefit accrued liability reserve for payments that are due to certain members upon separation from district at retirement, a capital reserve, which we've utilized successfully the last 2 budget years, where we've taken saved surplus money and utilized them for long-needed capital projects. 2 of the premier ones being obviously the renovations of the north and east football fields and the track at east, as well as the retaining wall and all that other work. We have assigned unappropriated fund balance. That's just a fancy word for the purchase orders that weren't fulfilled at the end of a year. So you close out a particular school year and not everything is received. You do need to carry those monies forward into the following year to pay those obligations. Assigned appropriated fund balance, that is actual monies we are appropriating from reserves from one of those categories in order to fund the subsequent year's budget. Non-spendable, that's just a holding account for our workers' comp claims. There's $250,000 of seed money that's always there to keep that bank account open. And an unassigned fund balance, that's the bottom category. We remember back to the end of 2015, That's the category where we had the $16,000 at that end of that school year. That's our rainy day fund. Ideally, you always want to keep that, if possible, at 4% of the subsequent year's budget. And we've been able to do that now for the last 4 years, which has been fantastic. I'll just jump back there for a second, because the bottom bullet, I just want to bring forward, just everyone understands why we're talking about fund balance. Obviously, we're adding a 9-period day next year. We also know that we've had a number of expenses we've detailed throughout the budget presentation process that we actually have no control over, that there is large dollar and percentage increases in those costs. Like health insurance, for example, is growing by almost $3.5 million next year for both the premiums and for the employees eligible for opt-out. You have to imagine we have district salaries totaling about $170 million, figuring just a rough 2% increase on those salaries. That's growth of $3.4 million. We already know our special ed tuition to BOCES, as well as our occupational tuition to BOCES for special ed students, growing by about $2 million next year. And then obviously employee benefits and other categories are growing by nearly $1.5 million, as well as our contributions to the teachers' retirement system by almost $900,000. So we started the process in just those 5 categories with $11 million worth of budget growth. So obviously, to develop a budget for this year with the very limited revenue increase that we have has been quite challenging.
John, before you go on, just a quick question.
Sure.
For those categories that you just talked about, are any of the monies eligible that we received from either ESSER or the American CARES Act eligible to offset some of those costs?
Well, you could use those funds for things that could be funded through the general fund. I'm not sure what you.
Like, can
It
we
wouldn't
directly
be a
pay?
component of fund balance.
That's what I'm asking. Can we directly pay any of these?
We wouldn't
whether it
fund our
be-
fund balance with the grants. You
Okay.
actually have to spend the money on the applicable items and then seek reimbursement.
A lot of questions that I get from the community are, we got all of this money, why are we
Yeah, I mean,
continuing?
people are under the impression, just like with smart schools, that we received the $11 million. We didn't receive any money. We spent money, we apply for it, and we get reimbursed. The $22 million, we were given 20% upfront at the start of the grant, so we do have some money on hand. But throughout the rest of the process, we'll be spending the money, laying it out, filing paperwork, and then receiving reimbursement for those expenses. It works the same way with all the grants.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So utilization of fund balance. We have, in our last 2 years' budgets, earmarked certain amount of reserve dollars to balance our budgets. Obviously, you want to do this very wisely and with careful consideration when you're doing it for recurring operating expenditures. But the simple fact is we are growing the budget exponentially for this new program. It is something new. We're adding nearly 30 teachers. We had to increase the day of our teacher assistants, our aides, et cetera. So there were a lot of moving parts that had to be done to accomplish this task, as well as all the courses, obviously, that we're adding. So certainly there's no way to grow that in a year where the budget can only grow by 2%. So being very cautious through the budget building process, I believe by utilizing $6 million in reserves, as outlined here, I would recommend $3.2 million from our retirement system reserve, about $1.5 million from our EBLAR reserve, and $1.3 million from our TRS reserve, a total of $6 million, earmarked for expenditures for next year in those specific categories, which will help us then have the monies available in the rest of the revenue budget to pay for these increases in costs. So, I mean, yes, $6 million is a lot of money, but in the scheme of a budget of Sachem's, it is only 1.7% of the total budget. So if we did use this 1.6 million, our budget next year would be just shy of $350 million. So it would give you the flexibility for all the items that we're adding and to allow the budget to grow by about 2.8%. So in the last presentations leading up to this, obviously, you know, we had a very large budget gap. So if we go all the way back in time to early January, our first full draft budget was just shy of $359 million. Quite a variance from our available revenue. So over the last several weeks and months, obviously we've made some adjustments. A couple of board meetings ago, the board did authorize us doing some transfers within the current year budget. So we are purchasing some supplies and materials and various equipment for different departments throughout the district using general fund dollars that are on hand now as well as federal grant dollars, so we could remove that from next year's budget. Budgeted salaries in general, we had a number of retirements, so I can project that down about $1.2 million. Our 9-period staffing, based on all the master schedules we've built to date, originally we projected 38 additional teachers. We believe that we can do that now with 26. So I'll remove that 766,000. Transportation, we just revised some of the projections on the contractual expenditure side. Facilities, I just flattened out some of their lines. They were looking for growth and additions in equipment. They wanted some additional monies for contractual expenses, additional supplies. For right now, I'm going to go with flat budget to our current year. So I think that's appropriate. And then other benefit expenses. Obviously, if there's fewer employees coming on board, there's fewer health insurance costs, FICA costs, et cetera. I've reduced the benefit expenses lines by about $1.6 million. So reductions to date are about $7.7 million. So right now, our draft budget is just over $351 million. So if our revenue budget holds steady with the number we have today, I still have about a $1.3 million variance. On April 1st or thereabouts, we should have the finalized state budget. We'll check the finalized aid runs then. Certainly between now and then, we'll continue going through the budget. We have earmarked a couple of areas where we probably can save some additional monies without impacting program. So I don't think there's going to be any problem with closing that variance. And that really wraps it for today. Unfortunately, usually by this time in my presentations, I like to have a balanced budget. Unfortunately, that's not possible this year, but I will bring forward to you on April 13th the final revised budget for your consideration for adoption.
Does anyone have any questions for John? Please, Mrs. Slattery.
Thanks, John. So I've been a member of the audit committee for a long time. So prior to then, when we had the trouble we did with the financial trouble, we were taking from reserves to constantly take from reserves to use as revenue. So we would take from reserves, use as revenue till there were no more reserves left. And that's how we ended up in trouble, which we had massive layoffs, cuts of programs, everything else. So I understand what you're saying is we're taking because we're growing the budget, because we're adding the 9-period day, which we have to add. We've been on a waiver, so there is no choice. But how are we going to stop ourselves from falling into that situation again?
Yeah, I mean, and that is always a possibility. So we just go back to the slide. I am using it from specific reserves, which are earmarked for those specific purposes. So for example, the $1.3 million from the TRS reserve, I'm pulling those monies from that reserve to offset the growth in the employer contributions for the retirement fund. The retirement fund does ebb and flow each year where the employer contribution percentages go up and down. Unfortunately, it's typically tied to the stock market. So I'm hoping for a rebound there because that'll help us. So we're not using it to pay the bill. We're paying it to pay the increase in the bill, because it's a $13-14 million a year expense. The EBLAR reserve, the one in the middle for $1.5 million, that's just earmarked for potential retirement separation payments. I cannot spend money from that reserve for any purpose other than separation payments. So that's just an estimate. If, let's say, we only need $900,000 for separation payments, I'm only going to be removing $900,000 from that particular reserve. So the 1.5 is the ceiling. If for some reason next year was a very high year of retirements and it was 1.7, I can still only draw down 1.5 because that's what I earmarked. But the likelihood is that that's actually probably a conservative number. The 3.2 is slightly aggressive. It is a sizable portion of the ERS bill, but it is the only way to bridge the gap to grow the program. I mean, 26 FTEs, just that group alone is over $2.5 million. When you figure in the salaries, the benefits, and everything else. I don't think, or at least I hope we don't have, because it's not usually how the cycles work. We had a 12.5% increase in health insurance this year. Health insurance is a $40 million bill in Sachem. So when it grows by percentages that high, that's a big jump. You would hope that we're on the peak of a cycle and it'll drop back down next year. so that we could draw back on the amount of reserves we would need to utilize in a future year. I don't think that you're going to get out of spending reserves next year. I mean, we've had a couple of years in a row now where we've had to earmark monies for specific reasons. 2 years ago, we earmarked $3.9 million because we didn't know what the state was doing with our state aid. We didn't need to use any of it. This current year, we've earmarked about $3.4 million. We're going to need about half of it. So again, while you earmark, it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to use all of it. But again, $6 million is only 1.7% of the total budget. So I mean, I think it's a reasonable number. We're not touching unassigned fund balance, our rainy day fund. I've pledged to keep that at 4%. So that's the monies that you had, God forbid, you had some major failure during the year that you didn't anticipate that we could go to help bridge that gap. So while $6 million is a large number, it's not a very material number in relationship to our budget, although it is 10% of our current reserves.
Right, but again, it's to grow the 9-period day, to grow our budget
and-
to the 9-period day.
And this year, you know, we should finish with some surplus as well. Obviously, the first $6 million of that surplus is getting earmarked for next year.
Got it.
So while there may not be substantial growth in fund balance at the end of this year, you do remember this year we did drop a little by a few $1 million because we've spent $9 million in the last few years from the capital reserve. I would anticipate total fund balance to actually be a little higher at year end this year than we're currently at now. So maybe 62, 63 million. You know, we have a couple of things we're still tracking, but that's what it's looking like right now.
Right, and then just again, so the unassigned fund balance, the rainy day fund, the reason why that's important is because now, as the states or the federal government has given out all the COVID relief money, all of that, eventually that's going to come due to, it could affect state aid or our aid in the future. So, which could cause a drop in that, which is what everybody has warned.
Yeah, I mean, even representatives that were here at the legislative committee, obviously, you know, we're relying on the state to be mindful with how they spend these federal dollars, knowing that obviously it's going to stop at some point and they need to have a plan for other revenues to backfill all the commitments they've made this year and next year.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Can I just jump in real quick, one, just to add on to that? It's not often that or ever that we add 26, 28 FTEs at one time. But again, to grow our program, this 9-period day is going to be really, I think, a boon to our students, to our schools, to what we can do. Just imagine another 40 minutes every day with our master teachers in our classrooms and what we'll get out of that. So not something we want to do, always applying or looking to apply fund balance or reserves. We have to be very careful about applying reserves. But again, I wouldn't want anyone else at the helm of that other than Mr. O'Keefe in terms of what his abilities around our budgeting and our programs.
I totally agree.
Mr. Scavo?
John, I mean, traditionally, when the budget's released, you know, there's a Senate version and an Assembly version of it. That there's a possibility we may see some of that $1.2 million in aid. You know, maybe not.
Yeah, it is possible. I read through both of their recommendations, and the way they read, both sides seem very, very happy with what's been presented by Hochul.
Mhm.
So I'm not certain that we would anticipate any change at all in foundation aid, which is obviously our primary category. I think they've accepted. You have to realize that the vast majority of districts are seeing huge increases in foundation aid because they've been underfunded for so long. We're in a hold harmless category, so we're only seeing the 3% growth there. Some of the expense-driven aid categories, you know, the initial projections coming from the ST3 we just filed, sometimes they do review the numbers, and there are some slight tweaks. So we might see some monies from the expense-driven aids. The timing on capital project final cost reports being filed can also give us a little additional building aid, which could drive up the number, which will then also change the tax levy percentage increase slightly, because building aid is a deduction in the calculation for the levy. If you're getting building aid, you take it off the bottom. So it doesn't help the program side of the budget, but it helps the capital side of the budget.
So there's some hope there that
Yeah, I mean, in most years, you do see a nice increase in the April 1 runs. I don't anticipate any material change. But I certainly would be welcome to see some additional monies, yes.
And, so the other concern I have, like I said, I mean, I was listening to Doug Smith speak the other night, and the issue you have is that when they drop all this money into a school and we implement programs, whether it's for social emotional or mental health or, and all of a sudden it dries up. In order to maintain those programs, either you have to fund it,
Yep.
okay, or another federal grant has to come along.
Correct.
And he said something the other night, last week during the legislative hearing, a meeting that we had, that kind of scared me a little bit. He said we might see a possible gap elimination.
Yeah. I heard the same
adjustment
thing.
again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that gap elimination adjustment is probably one of the sole responsibilities of the gray hair that I have on my head.
Mhm.
Over the 5 years or 6 years, from 2010 to 2016, we lost $138 million. And we took cuts of 20, 18, 17, 14, $9 million. And it wasn't restored until 2016. But the plan that time was to just use reserves 1 year.
Mhm.
And then Cuomo kicked it another year. And then the governor kicked it another year. And that's where we ran into that problem with
Correct.
$16,000. But hopefully we never get there again. The fact that we're not using, surplus in the previous year to buy down tax levies and buy down, equalization rates to equal amounts, to an average, is going to help us because, we're underspending our budget by $8 to $10 million every year.
Mhm.
If we ever did have to get into our unassigned fund balance, we could always backfill it, with that money as well, couldn't we? To bring it to the 4% if we're deficient.
Yeah, I mean, obviously having $60 million on hand, it gives you many years of flexibility. But if there was a sizable cut, like in the first year of gap elimination adjustment, where they took what, 18 or $20 million in one shot, program would have to be reduced.
Yeah.
It's the only place to take the money from.
Yeah.
And then you need to hold the program flat there. So it's not like you have to cut the program necessarily each year. You need that one painful cut, and then you try to weather the storm through those years,
Yeah.
because that becomes the new normal of what your state aid is. The state aid actually grew, quote unquote, through the gap elimination adjustment because they took away less each year in small incremental amounts. But certainly the first year was very, very painful.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Please, sorry, Sonia.
Just, this is like kind of an unusual dating situation because now it's like 3 weeks before our next meeting, but there's also the time we're going to have to adopt the budget. So, but you're not presuming, based on your conversation with Scava, there's going to be no surprises next Friday.
I don't believe there'll be any. I mean,
Okay.
I've read through the Senate and the Assembly documents, and they're basically very happy with what's been presented. So it's almost like I don't even know if there's anybody necessarily up there in the chambers arguing about it. I think it's just going to pass as written.
Okay,
You know,
so,
it's going to be very close to whatever's written. There might be some tweaks here and there to things that we don't even necessarily see behind the scenes, but I don't anticipate any major changes to aid.
all right, so presuming it's exactly as written now, you're going to close that 1.29 million gap through other budgetary mechanisms.
Yeah, Mr. Isoni, I think your question as posed is like, are we going to walk in here in 3 weeks and say, I'm sorry, but we're going to eliminate this or do this to close that?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
we're not
You're
anticipating.
going to know in the first week of April, as soon as the runs come out, how everything balances out. So you'll certainly, if there was some reason, we'd always call an emergency meeting or something if we had to. But I anticipate walking in on the 13th with a balanced budget, that you're well aware of well in advance. And then it's just pro forma for you to adopt it.
That we are whole.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Oki.
John, the adoption of budget, is that the last day or is there, when's the legal
So,
requirement for?
Allison, you recall the legal last date? I know it's very close to that. We'd have to count, was
So
it
the
45
question is-
days?
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
would have to know what our final aid numbers are at that point.
Yeah, I mean, we should know by Friday the 1st or maybe Monday the 4th or whatever the date is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, John.
I'm just going to continue on. We mentioned, speaking of mental health and our students, last week we had a presentation around Northwell Health and a potential partnership with Sachem Schools. We continue that conversation with Northwell. I did go back and ask them to make us our own clinic here at the behest of some of our board members, certainly, and I know our community members. They're not able to do that at this time, but they are happy to have us as part of the partnership. There are 15 districts on the waiting list. I told them you have to hold a spot for Sachem, and so we will be moving forward with a cross contract with Western Suffolk Posties, and we will be announcing very shortly, once we make that signature, that we will have that partnership with Northwell here for our Sachem community. So very happy to announce that tonight. In addition, this past board meeting as well, you'll recall that the board asked us to write a letter. Mr. Venator and I worked on a letter to our governor, our commissioner, our regents. And in that letter, we spoke about the Regents test, the New York State testing program, APPR, and assessments. That letter is going to be, has been looked at by all parties and is going to be signed by our board president, myself, Mr. Barbera, the president of the SCTA, and Mrs. Salvia, the president of the Sachem Administrators Association. So all 4 signatures will be on it as we send it out to the commissioner and to the governor. And that will go out tomorrow. I'm going to ask Mr. Piccirillo if he sign that tonight, probably before he goes, or tomorrow, and we'll get that out to the community. And of course, we'll post it on our page as well. I had one more note. Okay, Mrs. Hines, I'm sorry that we switched that order there, but
No, please
all
don't be.
good, all good. Thank you.
I'm glad Ms. Pickowitz is here.
We are going, hi, Ms. Pickowitz, how are you? We're not drawing attention at all that you just, you came in. Oh, fantastic.
Science fair, Tamarack.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Oh my
it was
gosh, yeah, I
great.
was in
Yeah,
there
we saw
today.
it today.
A lot of
From
the,
Tears, they
it
were
was
so
cute.
cute. They were, just to share a happy story, there was like I had a 1st to 2nd grader one, and then another kid who was that same grade, and they came back to his parent. They're all like giving 5, good job, we're so proud of you. So it's just, I love going
it's
to
really
things
neat.
like that.
Yeah, what was interesting, I visited today, a lot of their research projects had to do with food, right?
Mm.
Skittles and popcorn and other things. I was like, that was pretty neat. I would have done something with food myself. Gummy bears, will they expand in water? That was a great experiment, right? So they're made with a membrane that does absorb the water, and they do expand. So I learned a lot today down at the Tamarack Science Fair. Really neat. Yeah, they're promoting good food. So, Ms. Hines, we wanted to talk with our community. This kind of was something that was hatched up in our office one day when we talked about, my goodness, we may actually be at a place in time, and I'm not going to say that word that I say at every meeting. I'm not going to say it tonight, but we might be at a place in time where we're past a certain thing, and we can really focus in, like refocus on our kids' education, on our students, on what we are here to do, really. I know we educate the whole child tonight. We honored some great students. We honored a great master teacher. But we want to get back to really looking at what we started a few years back with education in this district and really promoting it. And so we kind of branded this idea of refocused, and I asked them to capitalize that E and D at the end and make it a little more pronounced. So we're focusing on education. But Ms. Hines, I'm going to ask you to kind of walk us through this presentation tonight. I'm probably going to jump in a bunch of times. I apologize in advance, but I'm really excited about this work and happy to bring this to our community.
Yeah, thank you. So about a month and a half ago, my team and I were sitting down and we started crafting this presentation that eventually is what I'm going to present tonight for you. It's twofold. At the time, we were looking to prepare ourselves for our revisit through Tri-State. For those of us who may have been a part of that, I know Ms. Slattery was a part of that, Ms. Wada was a part of that. And it was a really great time for us to reflect on what we have done here in Sachem around education in the past 5 years. And we were really excited to see, wow, in 5 years, we have so much to really be prideful about and to celebrate. And so tonight we want to share that with you. But we also thought that it was a time, and I don't want to say the thing either, but as we are seeing the thing wane, that we can hope to refocus and re-energize ourselves on the goals that we had around student growth and learning. So just to kind of take a little bit of a step back in time, in 2017, we, through our recommendation, we had talked with the Board of Education at that time about really looking at education for all students and how we can find greater success academically and social emotionally. And in that same year, I made the recommendation to partner with our Tri-State Consortium, which is a group of high-performing school districts across Connecticut, Westchester, Long Island, New York City, and New Jersey as more of like a critical friends model to look at data together, pedagogy, and programs in place in our school systems. Also at that time, we did an audit of the entire school system and all the educational programs. We had done student roundtables, teacher roundtables, parent roundtables. I made a recommendation to start what is now our curriculum council. And we really just wanted to look at everything from top to bottom. Additionally, at that time, and thankfully using our Tri-State Consortium, it was approved, and we also started to revise our Board of Education goals so that we can reimagine what education would look like here in Sachem. From 2017 to 2020, our staff members began getting trained in Tri-State and to hold discussions around best practices and instructional programs. We held faculty meetings, again, more roundtables to help acquaint all stakeholders to elicit more feedback. Our curriculum and our programs began to be updated. This happened all K-12, and we really looked at everything through the lens of our student data and revised our goals for our instructional practice. But a few things popped out through all of this auditing and everything that we had talked about. First and foremost, we needed consistency. We knew, especially across our 10 elementary buildings, that while we had programs in place, there wasn't necessarily consistent resources or practices. Our teachers were very vocal about how curriculum was given to them to really deliver versus them being honored as our professionals with professional developments, their ability to create their own curriculum with the help of, BOCES consultants, state consultants that we knew best practice school districts were utilizing. We also saw that there was not a whole lot of student voice and choice at the time. And so these were things that we really wanted to honor and to move forward in our programming. So while all this train is moving and all this great work is happening, the pandemic hit. But rest assured, little by little, even though that was all going on, we still carried on with our goals. And that's why tonight I'm very excited to share with you what we have been able to accomplish so far. But also, it is finally time to refocus 100% on our vision. Nothing is new. We've been talking about everything that I share with you tonight and what we will continue on, but really just to remind ourselves of our why. And of course, our why is to deepen engagement for our students, to really help our students realize who they are, and to help them be self-advocates as they graduate and move into the world. So just very, very quickly, these are our overarching big idea Sachem Board of Education goals: safe and secure schools, enhance student achievement, improve parent and community and staff communication, improve our fiscal responsibility, commit ourselves to providing staff with our necessary tools and supports, our professional development, hiring practices, and then to really look at our vision and our mission. What is We Are Sachem? How do we get out, not just us being excellent on our academic field, in our athletic fields, but our excellence in terms of our academics as well. These are the Tri-State Consortium indicators. So for those of you that may not be familiar with them, the reason why we went with Tri-State is because we are not an IB school. We did not have AP at the time, but these are the indicators that we would want all students, similar to those programs that we want to see in our practices of our classroom. So moving past just multiple choice types of assessments, but more performance-based assessment, giving students multiple opportunities to show what they know, student voice and choice, so that student metacognition in the learning process. Do I know what I'm learning? Why I'm learning? Can I explain to you what I'm learning? Metrics of student performance, looking at varied types of data. So we have NWA, Fannis and Pinnell, our midterms, our finals, district assessments that we use, quizzes, etc. How do we look at that? How do we do that as a team for each building, for each student? And then our internal support. That's what do we have in-house to be able to provide all of this. So obviously our curriculum instruction, our professional development, our evaluations, equitable support for student needs. This is something that I think is really important for us to focus on tonight, because equity can sometimes have a little bit of a marred definition. But really, this is about how do we offer, no matter what type of program, initiative that we have, how do we make sure that this reaches and touches all of our students? What are the type of supports that we need so that all students can hope to achieve any of these new programs or upgrades that we have and be successful with it? And then our shared vision and environment for change. How do we know that everyone in our community understands our goals, what we're looking to do? Do we offer opportunities for feedback? When is it time to revisit and make sure that, are we on the right page? Do we feel like we're doing the right thing for kids? And then our external supports are our parent and community support. So everything from e-school to school messenger to Otis, which we're going to talk a little bit about later on, our newsletters that we send out, which I'll share a little bit about our 9th period newsletter that we will be sending out. Okay, so by and large, through all of that auditing that had occurred in 2017, along with making sure that we had more of our own teacher-led curriculum, professional development, student voice and choice, we also wanted to really look at the way that students were learning in our classroom. So for anyone that teaches on the elementary level, you know that it's more of that gradual release, that workshop approach. I'm going to show you a little bit, you're going to share, whether you do it in partner work or in independent work, or maybe I'm meeting with you in a small group. And then after all of that, we're going to come back together so that we can assess, how'd you do with that? And so we would like to have that. We've been working on this model across all of our school system. And now we're refocusing back onto our secondary schools. So making sure that our students aren't just sitting in their desks listening or taking notes, but that they're engaged in their learning, that they have partner work, that they're working with their teachers or their teachers are facilitating questions. And we know that this is happening across our classrooms, but again, just that consistent practice. So tying it all together, this is where the celebration really can start. So for the elementary schools, and again, in the last 5 years, on top of all of the technology and everything else that we've had, we have updated all of our science lab units for our elementary schools. This year, we are purchasing the last 2 lab units. Why is that so important? Because our science and our social studies curriculum had not been updated in quite a number of years. When I say in an excess of 5 to 8 years, that would be not exaggerating. But these science lab units, whenever we're looking at programming, we're not just looking at it in terms of elementary, but we're looking at it in terms of how is a student going to have these experiences that bring them to also into their secondary experience. So our science lab units are exactly like labs. They're hands-on, there's manipulatives, there's experiments, and these match up to the skills that we want to see and kids to have when they go into the middle school and then into the high school.
So Mrs. Hines, I was in the curriculum office today. There were pounds and pounds of dirt and hundreds of bags of seeds. And so I can only imagine that those will end up in our elementary classrooms. Our students will be working, understanding life cycle of plants, growing plants, stem, root, all those pieces.
That's actually for our elementary gardens.
What?
Yes, we
But
have
that is
elementary gardens.
a learning piece also. We don't just go plant basil and then put it on
No, we don't. No.
our pizza, right?
So on top of our elementary gardens, or the dirt, the seeds that you saw, that's for our elementary garden beds that we have at all the elementary schools that are wonderful technology department made for us. But the science lab units, yes, there are everything from growing different organisms to different ways that you can use kinetic energy. It's very exciting. Training began this year for the new units and will continue as we go into the summertime and into next year as well.
Ms. Hines, try not to correct me in front of everybody again next
Oh.
time, please. You could have just went with it and be like, yeah, that's part of,
Yeah,
who
but
would
I
have
feel
known?
like, I
Who
feel
would have
like you
known?
and I have a shtick going across the district
All right.
now.
We
I
are
look
going to be
forward to our
doing this
shtick.
presentation at all of our schools. all
Yes,
over.
yes, we are. Also expanding on to our refined reader and writers workshop. Again, when we talk about consistency and practices, the basis for everything that we do is small group instruction so that we are instructing students on their math, reading, writing levels according to their independent level that we assess them on. So we really wanted to make sure that those reader and writers workshop units, so basically the lessons that the teachers have at their disposal, are more quality versus quantity. That was something that we heard loud and clear. The units that we had, while they were created with some teacher voice in them, there was so much meat in them, and there was a lot that really just took away from the time of small group instruction. So we started this year with our writers workshop. Sarah Cordova is the consultant that we've been using, like all or many high performing districts. She's been working with us for a number of years, actually, and she helped us to start refining her and her team, our writers workshop units. We will then move into our readers workshop as well, and this work is continuing on into the middle school as well this year into next year. Additionally, we continue on with our project-based learning and our flipped classrooms. Today, we actually had a visit from, I believe it was Miller Place. They came to see some of our classrooms on the elementary level to see how we are conducting our flipped classroom. So that was really exciting and special for us, because as a teacher, it could feel, a little bit nerve-wracking to try something new. What if it works? What if it doesn't work? How does that look? So to be able to celebrate that all these years later for having another school district come and see it is something that I really applaud.
Ms. Hines, you may not have known this, but they were at East High School also,
Yes,
just
I
so
did.
you know.
Ms.
Thank
Hines,
you.
could you just define what a flipped classroom is?
Sure. So
Great
flipped
question.
classroom is in, so, if we're going to talk about the next day, and I'm just going to talk about science, let's say, for example, they're going to do something around kinetic energy. I think I said that earlier. They would share a video, a phenomena video, perhaps the night before, where the student for homework would watch that. They'd come in the next day ready to jump into that activity or into that lab, so that in essence, the students are preparing, making homework valid, and not something to just say it's homework, but really something that's beneficial, meaningful. And you could do this in any classroom, and we're doing it elementary, middle school, high school. And as Dr. Pilateri said, we actually had someone go visit Mr. Brink's room over at East, so they can share some of his science flipped classroom lesson today. Problem. Our math workshop. This is something, again, when we heard and we did our audit, the math program at the time in the elementary school was a Pearson program. It was very old, about 8 to 10 years old. Our poor teachers were teaching units that they didn't even necessarily need to, because those weren't the state standards any longer. So again, we put our money where our mouth was, and instead of going out and buying a new vendor program, we put the money into professional development for our teachers, especially at the elementary level. And I could tell you, I started as an elementary teacher. You're not necessarily certified in math, and the math today is really challenging. And so, for our teachers, we really wanted to make sure that they felt comfortable with it. They helped write the units. With the consultant that we were using at the time, we purchased manipulatives. It's connected to our technology. We have everything from Khan Academy to, I'm trying to think, forgot right now. It'll come back to me. But we have, a plethora of instructional support that goes along with our technology, but it is run in a workshop approach, where there is that direct instruction, some small group instruction, kids working partner work, and then at the end coming together to see how it's going. So we're rolling into our 4th year of it. These units will connect directly into the work that we're now starting in our middle school. When parents are hearing that there's a period and a half of math, this is why. These skills that we are teaching in the elementary school eventually lead to those early geometry and algebra skills that kids will need in order to look to, self-select or go into those algebra classes in 8th grade, and then also moving on into geometry into the high school. So anything that we're doing in the elementary is not just for that section. It's really with a thought of K-12. How do we set things up so that students have the appropriate preparation and experience with the skills? We also brought back full force our district building and data teams. As Dr. Pilateri said today, while we were looking at our science fair at Tamarack, we were really there for our 2nd round of Tamarack's data team meeting. And that's when we look at the NWEA data, we look at the Fountas and Pinnell data, our math benchmarks, and we look at it from a grade level perspective, teacher perspective, and student perspective. And this is how we know, is our curriculum working? What sort of adjustments do we need to make? Is there anybody that's fell through the cracks? And this in particular was really important to us this year, because we wanted to ensure that we were addressing any learning gaps. So from our conversations at the district level with our buildings, then the principals will work with their teachers. As you know, we have additional PAs in each of our elementary schools. So those principal assistants in STEM and in humanities. So they're also a part of this. And it's how we're rolling here. We really need to ensure that all the lessons, everything that we're doing, is differentiated to the needs of our students.
So these data meetings, just to interrupt Erin for a moment. I'm sorry, but we had Tamarack today and Cayuga and really insightful meetings. And again, we talk about the opportunity to actually put other things aside and focus in and hone in on. We did case studies where we blanked out the names of students and just looked at results, and the teachers were able to actually name who the kids were. That's how drilled into their understanding of each of their individual students. And these things are phenomenal, these data team meetings. We should maybe record one of them because they're just really interesting and insightful. And I've learned so much from them, and really appreciate the knowledge base that our teachers have as a foundation, our principals, assistants, and the principals and those teams that they put together. I really commend them. I've been spending a lot of time in the buildings with those data teams. I really welcome that.
Yeah, and I think you hear the word data or data, and it sounds like but we are all very busy, but our number one goal is to be in our buildings discussing student data, our progress, and it's really been very rich conversations, and just informs everything that we are doing. Lastly, Putnam BOCES. So we've always had Putnam BOCES. This is a social studies curriculum that is utilized by most of the school districts, across New York State. We had it as a resource, but the textbook and the resources that we were using as a common foundation in the elementary school was quite antiquated. And so we started taking a look at Putnam BOCES and, identified some common units for each grade level that could be integrated very easily into the Reader and Writers Workshop. Actually, one of our Writers Workshop units is connected directly so that teachers aren't feeling overwhelmed with a million different things that they have to teach, but how can we really integrate that? And currently we have professional development after school where the grade levels are looking at those units and letting us know any feedback in terms of, material that they feel like they might have better resources for, or things that really don't jive with the curriculum as they know it. So we're in the process of that in all of the elementary schools. And once that's completed, we'll make somewhat of like a scope and sequence for each of the grade levels. And again, that will be our foundational curriculum.
And I'm going to jump here again for a second. So I used Putnam BOCES in another life for many years. And it's a wonderful resource. So I kind of refer to it as a repository. So if we're going to do a lesson on Iroquois in New York State or Native American, anything with the Empire State, New York City, there's 500 different resources in Putnam BOCES around that. So what we really need to do is hone in on those specific things that we want to do and create a scope and sequence, and then we can pull those resources out of there, make them our own. I had this conversation with Ms. O'Donnell today from your office, Erin. We had a great conversation around this. We can really hone what is in there, again, this big repository, into what it is that we want to do in Sachem. And I think our teachers can help us to do that as well. I think it'll be time well spent.
Yeah, I don't think anybody just wants to be handed a unit. So, going back again to having our teachers have voice and choice in what we're teaching is really important to us. Offering that professional development time so that it's used wisely for them to be able to look at it together in a grade is something that we've always committed to. And we're looking forward to the feedback so that we could streamline that for our staff. The other nice thing about Putnam BOCES is that there is a lot of technology resources in there. So again, when we talk about the Chromebook and small group instruction and being able to offer quality homework, should a teacher want to use that, it's there at their disposal. And then last, Lions Quest. So this is a part of our social emotional learning program. And again, when we talk about any of these rings, I can't preface enough that these are district-led programs, right? And these are things that we just didn't arbitrarily choose. We look at the state standards. We're using consultants that are being utilized at the state level, the BOCES level, and high-performing school districts. We're looking at them through our curriculum council. So, these are programs that we have offered quite a bit of professional development around. We've been looking at the data to ensure that they are successful. And we're really excited to be expanding upon them. So Lions Quest is the one program that was adopted through our Curriculum Council Wellness Committee because of the ease of it. It is technology-based. This year, our health chairs, our SEL chairs, and our elementary counselors, along with Ms. Graham, went through Lions Quest and identified 5 to 8 lessons per grade level that scaffold on one another. on top of the SEL peer education activities that are keystone activities for every grade level. So at the fifth grade mashup, you can sit with me. You go into the sixth grade, it's Project Kindness. And then on top of that, these Lion Quest lessons, which are everything from knowing myself as a learner, to understanding consequences, to getting along with others, emotional regulation, all of those life skills that we really want students to grasp and understand by the time they go into the middle school. So I think the only other thing to share with you here is if you went into those two little links, which I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it from here, you could see how we've connected our tri-state consortiums to what we said that we wanted to be able to accomplish in our Sachem Board of Ed goals. And this connects directly to Sachem Board of Ed goal number 2. Okay, thank you. So now we move on into our secondary, and you're going to see some similarities because, again, whenever we're talking about our programming, we want to make sure that it connects consistently K-12. So there's a lot of articulation, especially between 5th to 6th grade and 8th to 9th grade. Our 9-period day, celebrating that up and down. You will be getting our 9th period newsletter next week. This is something that we've crafted out of our 9th period committee. It will dispel everything from the new schedules to what the program looks like at the middle school to what the new classes are at the high school. There's a connector to being able to look at our updated guidance handbook, pictures of all of us if you want to see what we look like, if you didn't know what we look like. Tried to make everything as friendly as possible. And it also gives you a town hall date where we will be available to answer anybody's questions around the new 9-period day. And I know that we really talked about specifically our 5th grade parents who may be feeling really nervous about their students coming in. So we tried to really make that newsletter with them in mind to ensure that all questions could be answered. But on top of that, again, around secondary, is that AP capstone. We did not have AP capstone 5 years ago, and we've been able to implement that over the course of the past couple of years. And we are also working on the seal of civic readiness, which means that there will be a capstone project for all 7th graders, which is like a research dissertation program. And that will be through our English and our social studies classes. And this will connect, again, directly to those skills that students need when they move into the capstone program into the high school. I'm very proud of that. That workshop instructional model, as we had talked about in the elementary school, this directly connects to project-based learning, flipped classroom, just having more ownership for the students, making sure that we're giving them time to really connect with their learning, that voice and choice, partner work, project time. We know that this is going on across our buildings very successfully. Just want to make sure that it's consistent in all of our classrooms. We know that there's times when there has to be note-taking or assessments given or review, but 90% of our time we should really be seeing this in our classrooms. And we know that it is happening, so really proud of that. Our career and technical education pathways, again, this is something that we've worked on over the past 5 years. I'm very proud of it. Sachem is known for its CTE programs at the high school, but we really wanted to make sure that as the kids came into middle school, they knew what those pathways were. So we created mini units so that students could have exposure in the middle schools. And with that 9-period day in the 8th grade, they're going to have a course called Exploratory Career and College. And this will be where students can really work with guidance counselors, English teachers on the research piece, but also what pathway is best for me when I go to high school? How do I dive deeper into Naviance? What kind of colleges will I look at? And it will also envelop our parents so that they have a greater understanding of the high school graduation pathways. We have updated our health and our PE units as we talked about with the Lions Quest. We did the same thing for our health units, our health chair. And our PE chairs have worked on this tirelessly with us over the past few years, as well as our SEL chairs. Our chairs, by the way, if you don't know, these are our instructional teacher leaders. They are vital to our program in that whatever we are adopting, creating any initiatives, they help us to roll it out at the building level and with their colleagues in the department level. And so for health, we've updated it around more of that mental health and awareness piece. For the PE units, it's more about personal fitness. While we love our sports here, not everybody is a team sport, and some of our students really want to know a little bit more about personal fitness. So we've done everything from yoga to mountain biking to a myriad of other things that I'm sure Ms. Trumberg can remind me of, but I can't remember right this particular moment. But it is great. And then, our SEL programs. Again, some of our electives, therapeutic art is one of our electives that we're bringing to the high school. We've really thought about it from, full circle, what that looks like at the elementary school and how do you realize that all the way up to the high school. Our enhanced math and science curriculum. This is a big question and something that I get asked often. Why are we having extra math or science periods in the middle school? Well, as we told you, we've worked really hard in the elementary school to bring the most updated hands-on units for science. And we've also updated our math units to ensure that those geometry and algebra skills are being taught from kindergarten on up, so that by the time they get into the middle school, we have additional periods. So no one feels rushed. No one feels like they don't have enough time. And we're talking all students. We're always going to have those students who are high flyers, ready to take algebra or any other higher courses. And we may have students that even with those skills, they still may not want to take algebra. And that's okay too. We just want every student to be on their own continuum of success when it comes to math and science. So we are updating it so that there's every other day math 6th, 7th, and 8th, and for science 7th and 8th. And we are updating our curriculum around that so that, again, those continued lab skills in the science and in the math, working on those skills so that they can look to go into algebra should they wish in 8th grade or have a stronger foundation by the time they go into the high school. You'll see here again, we talk about our district and building data teams. So much like what we talked about here with Tamarack, we just completed our ones at the high school, and we're in the process of completing our ones in the middle school and at the elementary school. Right now, we do not have our benchmark NWA assessments, but we looked at our midterm data, we looked at our state report cards and our cohort reports, and we did child studies, almost like a case study. Our 8th graders right now going into 9th grade, how will we help those students who may not be reading on grade level necessarily? How will we help those students who need more math support? So these are the conversations that we'll have down to the student name levels. And then again, project-based learning and flipped classroom, we continue with that professional development and applaud our teachers who are doing that in their classrooms. Okay. So this is, we talked a lot about what we're offering for our students. These are the internal supports that we offer for our staff, as well as some additional supports for our students outside of the classroom day. So our curriculum council and our diversity committee.
Ms. Hines, you want me to do one of these? You're right. You're going for a long time, really, really fast.
Do you want to do it or?
No. I mean,
Okay.
I know you had curriculum council before this too.
I
We have
did.
another slide like this after this?
No, but you could do the next slide if you
All
like.
right,
How
I'll do
about
the
that?
next slide.
Okay, great.
All right.
So I think the number one thing I really want to just applaud and say, oh my goodness, is we are going to have 10 brand new playgrounds for our elementary schools, not in 5 years, but by this summer going into next school year, we will have brand new playgrounds in all of our elementary buildings. We will also have brand new outdoor classrooms for all of our elementary buildings, paved, fencing, to think 5 years ago, what we were hoping for, now we're really realizing it in all of these different spaces, both in and outside of our schools. We will also be doing this in our middle schools and in our high schools, so expanding on our courtyard areas, expanding on our courtyard area at North and building a new one at East, and having those outdoor classroom tables outside for students as well. 9-period day, which I just went into. Our code of character and crisis intervention plans. You know what, Dr. Pilter, if you want to expand on that one, I know you talked a little bit before about Northwell Health.
Sure. And that's part, they're going to be part of our crisis intervention team. They're going to be helping us to make these plans moving forward, professional development for our staff throughout special education, general education, social workers, psychs, counselors, anyone else that we really need, even our classroom teachers in terms of supports. And code of character, we've talked about a few times. We want to come at discipline, quite honestly, from a different approach, and just suspension. As I know, and I was once, Mr. Suspension, I'll say that, and was proud of that at that time, realized that suspension doesn't often work. We need to find other ways to get to our kids. And a lot of that time is guidance intervention or counselors intervention, and having those conversations and coming at it away from improving and building character as opposed to discipline or punishing. And that's something that several districts on the island are working on. I'm just glad to see us. Mr. Trumbetta is kind of leading that work for us, which is really important work around the district.
Yes, and in terms of our crisis intervention plans, our first parent workshop series, if you haven't seen it, we are going to resend it out again. Our first parent workshop series is going to be partnering with the Crisis Intervention Agency. They're coming down to talk about signs for parents, resources, etc. So we're excited about that.
That's next Wednesday, right? 6 p.m. And that's going to be virtual and in person.
Yes, and we're also going to tape it so that we can have it on our Otis platform, which we'll be sending out to our families as well. So we have our curriculum council and our diversity committee, which is comprised of board members, parent members, community members, students, and staff. We talked about our district assessments that we're using in our data teams, the IST process. This is like the RTI model, but the way that we take that data and look at students who are having difficulty and making sure that they have the interventions in place that they need, and or the modifications or accommodations, differentiation of instruction to be successful in their classrooms. Professional development and the conference days. Each year we meet with teacher leaders, administrator leaders, district office to just gauge what are the needs of our professional development. Some of that is, district-led, depending on whatever initiatives we're rolling out. So for example, our science units, we need to be able to provide professional development on that, Putnam BOCES, but then there's also other needs. If we're seeing a spike with students with like ADHD, for example, we may hear from a particular building or a particular grade level who would like to have professional development around that. And so we work to offer that. We also have grade level and department meetings routinely, chair meetings. And lastly, our curriculum dashboards. As I talked about earlier, we talked about consistency and just making sure that our teachers had all the resources at their fingertips in one place. So, Allison, can you just hit that link right there really quick? I'm not going to go into it too much just because this is like a teacher version, I believe, but I just wanted you to see very lightly. You're not going to be able to really read it from where you are, but online, when this is posted, there will be a parent version, and the parent versions are on there right now under my website. But this is consistency at its best in terms of making sure our staff has everything that they need at their fingertips. So if I'm in 5th grade, I have up there all of my instructional software that I can utilize for every single academic area in my classroom. I know what trimesters all of my data is due in terms of my benchmarking. I have right there my lessons from my reader and writers workshop. It's all hyperlinked into the lessons and any of the resources. I have my math, I have my science, my social studies. Even down on the bottom is all of my SEL and social emotional learning, Lions Quest lessons. And then way, way, way down at the bottom, if I'm having any difficulties with my students, links to the paperwork, questions, slides to show me how to fill out everything for when I meet with my building principal and the team to look at the student data together. These are what we have in place for all elementary, and we are constructing right now secondary, so by department. So as the elementary ones are on our website, the secondary ones will be on there so that, again, parents can see the clear pathway and units that kids are learning things about in each of our classes and departments. Okay, so Dr. Peters, you want to?
Yeah, I'll jump in on external support. Sure. So I'm going to start up at like midnight there. Which we're getting close to. School Messenger and Remind.
But we're talking about instruction, so
yeah, no, it's important.
Right,
it is definitely. We could spend as much time as we like.
Yes,
that's right, because we don't often get to do this, right, Mrs. Hines? So School Messenger and Remind is something that we utilize to make sure that we can inform and communicate with our parents. And as I say to people, let's attempt to over communicate if we can. We added our latest feature, the text feature, and Patty, you used it the other day, right? So we shot out information to our community in text form, and we want to make sure that we are working with our external partners, or people outside the schools, and sometimes inside the schools as well, to support them and support what we're doing. Otis is an online platform for family workshops. Can we click on that, Otis, really quickly? This is a means by which our staff and our parents can have access to, just click, there we go, have access to a lot of it, of what we do
library,
with
Allison, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
It'll just be an example of what it looks like.
up top
Up
left,
top.
course library.
To the left.
There you go.
Yep, right there.
Examples of some of the courses that we have here. That Apple for parents, we don't really use Apple products for the most
Right.
part. So we'd have Google in here, Google Chromebooks, things like that, all the different things. If Chromebook for parents, we can click on and get resources, things like that.
We have a Sachem one, not to interrupt. So this will be where like our parent workshop series will be. We haven't sent it out yet because we do want to make sure that there's plenty populated in there. So right now, Mr. Renda, for example, has populated all of the instructional technology for parent workshops in there. We'll be putting our general parent workshops, special education process, you name it, we're trying to put it all in one house. It's almost sort of like a masterclass for parents and staff, and you can go in there and take a plethora of professional development or workshops.
Thanks, Allison. You can X that out, jump back. Community surveys, that was something that, again, that came out of the tough couple of years we've had in terms of the pandemic, and we started to survey parents and students around different things, and we're going to continue to implement that. Conference and open house days in which we welcome students and community members into our schools. I know that there is a career day coming up, things such as that as well. Our BOE committees working constantly with our community. We just had a fantastic legislative forum recently. SEL and district newsletters go out from the district and are shared with our community, so people are up to date with what it is that we're doing in terms of our students' social emotional learning and other aspects of our district. PTA is going strong, and SEPTA as well. Great partners. We meet with them via Zoom and in person. That continues as well. And of course, we utilize our social media, district, Facebook, Twitter, and the like to get our message out. So these are some of our external supports, and it's one of our indicators, parent and community support number 8 in terms of tri-state.
Thank
How'd
you.
I do, Erin?
Very good.
Thank you. It's connected
approve.
to number 6, right?
I approve.
Thank you.
Yeah, so all students, though, we really wanted to just ensure that not just academically, which we talked about our social and emotional program that we have, but just kind of touching on, again, everything that we're doing to really ensure and enhance those student connections. And this is just like a small sampling of all the great things that go on. But like our project kind of start with hello, again, those peer education keystone programs that we have at each grade level, conversation club and homework clubs. Our homework club or our enrichment after school club is in addition to the extra help that our teachers offer for everything from, again, looking at homework or an additional reading or math time with a staff member. Our conversation club is for our E&L students. That's actually partnering with the Sachem Public Library, and that's to help students who are new to our country just converse and really get to understand the language in a fun atmosphere. Our peer leader experiences, our student roundtables, our inclusion walkthroughs, which we're doing through our diversity committee, walking through the buildings. Are they warm and welcoming? Do they represent all the different types of students that we have? Our first project is to really revamp and redo over the Board of Education hallways and our registration for new families who come in. As you know, we've welcomed this year our therapy dog visits. So again, and then we just
Both
put a
dogs
couple
are
of-
officially
they're
certified now, right?
They are officially certified now, yeah.
Oakley
But
and Bailey.
this is just a small smattering, but again, we're always thinking about different ways that we can connect with students, really make sure that our students feel engaged. And when we go around to our faculties, we'll be doing activities with the teachers on all of these different slides. So it's not just us standing there, but really talking about and sharing in the successes of everything going on. And just to recap again, we just can't say it enough. Data is the basis for all of our lesson planning. So, not just IEP goals for those students who have an individualized learning plan, but we want that for all of our students. We want all of our students and all of our staff to feel as though we are planning for the needs of our students individually. The curriculum is the foundation, but using that data allows us to understand what the students' needs are from day to day. Our whole child and SEL as a lens. Again, those student connections. What are my students' stories? What's going on in their life? How can we help them? Differentiation in all classrooms. You hear that word or modifications and accommodations and you think that it's really for only special education students. It needs to be for all students, making sure even our high flyers that we're pushing them further on down that successful path. And then those students that we see that are just kind of like just gleaning along. They're doing okay. Well, needing to really push them further, making sure that they're in the right pathways, that they're challenging themselves. Utilizing all the various resources to engage our learners through our technology. So embedding that technology, our instructional software, and again, just that workshop approach, K-12. And when we say equity, we would like to see this for all students. And last, our next steps again is just revisiting our mission and our vision, right? So we know we are Sachem, that's like the overarching, but the mission that we have was crafted quite some time ago. And it's always a great exercise as a district to say, does it match who we are now and where we want to go? So that is, our recommendation. As well as continued tri-state training and professional development opportunities, our continuous review of our curriculum and assessment, and expanding on our social emotional opportunities, and really just greater transparency for our community so that they feel like consistent experiences and teaching and learning is going on across our classrooms. So thank you.
Obviously, it's a lot, but it's ongoing. And it's something, again, that I'm really happy with jumping in with both feet, and we're really focusing in this area now.
Does anyone have any questions? Please, Mr. Pickowitz.
I thought you were doing the pamphlet one. So this kind of leads into some
The
questions.
ninth period?
Yeah.
We can pop that up too.
No.
It's-
I'm
okay.
glad this came up because
Yeah.
there were some conversations that I wanted to have. I was going to actually bring it up as a future conversation, but we could, kind of bring some stuff up now. Because it's funny because I was kind of, now that we're refocusing moving forward, I went back to, previous notes. And there was a handout you gave us of like the overview from 2021, 2022. And I kind of sat back and read it as an educator because I'm a teacher. And I was looking at in elementary, the new writing curriculum, the new science kits, the NWEA rollout this year, the Putnam BOCES curriculum, which I know is rolling out slowly, the new curriculum guides in math. That's a lot of new. I'm just curious, like a pulse of like, I know it's going, but how is it going? Are we getting feedback of maybe more the teachers need in terms of professional development? It just sounds like for me a lot. It's great, but it's a lot in 1 year that,
Well, it's been
is
5
overwhelming.
years.
It has been 5 years.
Yeah, it's been 5 years. So this is we're just sharing the culmination of everything that has occurred in 5 years.
Okay.
So any of the goals that we're talking about here has rolled out slowly but surely over 5 years. Google, let's say, for example, that was something that shot out of the cannon because of the pandemic, but that was one of our goals, was to expand upon that. Each year we send out, surveys to our staff to ask them how the professional development's going. We give an exorbitant amount of professional development throughout the school year. Last year, and I think it's tomorrow actually too, we meet with our teacher leaders from SCTA, and then we'll have another one with our administrative leaders, because it's not just the teachers, the administrators we look upon as our instructional leaders in the building. So they also have professional development around all of this. It's definitely a big nugget. But when do you start? And when we first looked at everything in 2017, we knew we were a diamond in the rough, but we had programs that were really quite antiquated, and that just can't be for our students. So slowly but surely, as we're hearing that, adjustments need to be made, as teachers are telling us that something's not working or we have to think about something different, we've done everything from revamping our elementary report cards so that they better suited how the teachers are actually teaching in the classroom, to offering PD online. I know this summer we are anticipating that we will offer hours in the summertime for those teachers that would like to start their PD journey a little bit earlier on, so they're not only doing it during the school year. But I think we're always asking, what else can we do to support you? We certainly are spending quite a bit of money. I know back in 2017, we're thinking, oh my goodness, how are we going to be able to do all of this? And here in Sachem, we are quite lucky that besides the pandemic grants, our title grants are something that we were able to really look at and realign so that it matched all the goals of what we're doing. So anything, in terms of our professional development programming that we have, it typically is coming out of our title grant funds. And those are funds that don't typically change year to year. We're trying to keep things that are like those one-time purchases for our pandemic relief funds, but we've also been able to add back our summer school, summer enrichment program, our Saturday academy. So yeah, it's a lot, but I think that what we try and do, especially from, my lens, our team's lens, is to just keep asking, what else can we do to help you? So that's where we also look to you all for what you're hearing in the community, what people might not be able to, we don't hear necessarily because we're in and out of buildings all the time. So we do appreciate your feedback as well.
I'll just jump in terms. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go. And I'm completely lost my train of thought now. Yeah, I didn't write it down. Curriculum needs to be like a living document. So you do go through constant revision, and so our science kits are constantly being looked at and making sure we want to be more hands-on as that meets the new standards and things such as that. So there will be a certain level of constant change as we move forward throughout curriculum.
And I have to say this, 'cause I think I've said this, before, and I know Mr. Rivera is out there. I would never make a recommendation around something I wouldn't want for my own children, and something that I don't roll up my sleeves and jump into myself. And I have to believe, even though I've had some tomatoes thrown at me, or it's a little tough sometimes, that we would all want that for our kids. Like I know, for example, in the beginning when our math units were first rolling out, Mr. Barbera called. He was new to his position, said that, there was some really tough talk around it. People were upset about it. I went down to that union office and I went through it with every single union rep, like whatever we have to do to make people feel comfortable, and or if we're not doing it right, what else do we need to do to change it? But we do have to move on, right? We can't just be okay with the status quo. And I think that is something for Sachem, for really any district. Change is hard, but you do have to start moving forward so that you're making sure that what you're committing to is really going to garner that success for students. And I think we've proven that that's what's happening here in Sachem. I'm very proud of that.
And I agree with that 100%. I mean, I teach 6th grade math. So
Right.
when something new comes trickling down, I'm focusing just on math. I'm thinking of that K-5 teacher who is planning social studies, science, math,
Mhm.
ELA to have, newer, whether it's within the last year or two, it's a lot. And if the programs, aren't necessarily running the way that they're supposed to, like the Putnam BOCES, it's not really a program where you open it up, here's a lesson and you go. There's a lot of pulling from here and there. Then you're also planning your math lesson and things like that. So I just want to make sure that, that we're cognizant of that, these programs, and the rollout of them, we just have to kind of support and make sure that they're happening, in a timely manner, but also at the same time that it's not too much at once where the teachers are overwhelmed and then we have different schools on different pages when the rollout is not.
Yeah.
That's just my concern. When I looked at it, when I was like, if I taught these 4 subjects right now, I'd be wanting to pull,
So-
the
Yeah,
hair
I mean,
out of
that
my
was the
head.
whole reason why we created those curriculum dashboards, so that everything was there. We definitely heard that, well, I have resources here and I have resources there. And meeting last year with the SCTA reps, that was what we did. We unveiled it and we said, what do you think? Is this more helpful? The only area right now where I would say that our teachers need to look through resources is that Putnam BOCES. And that is because it is something that is our new focus this year, right? So each year we've kind of rolled something out a little bit. But as I said earlier, that's where we gave that, professional development hours, where they can sit together as a grade level at their leisure with no students, no administrators even there, to just go through it and say, what do you think of the resources? What do you not want to see? What aligns to the units? And that's what we can hope for, right? Is that we just keep giving time for that. But I mean, I 100% agree, right? Especially elementary, coming from that myself. You're a jack of all trades, master in none, and you have a lot going on. So I think we've really created an environment where everything is at your fingertips, but you do need to dive in and go through it.
And then the last question, you touched upon it too. We do the math workshop model, but our main book is the modules, correct? That main book is.
They're
that
not
blue?
they came from the modules, but we crafted them ourselves. So we didn't just take the modules. We went through them and we looked through all the lessons. We matched them up to the standards. But if you're talking about like Smithtown, I think at one point was using just full modules.
Right.
These are differentiated based on the feedback of our teachers. Those were created with our teachers and our consultant at the time by grade level.
Okay. Have there ever been any survey of the teachers of if that's that's what they want versus a program itself? I mean, I know there's no program that's perfect. I mean, my grade level right now, we're previewing 3 series ourselves, looking at a new one, and there's not one that we could say like, I love this one, this is great. But when you have a program like that, you have remediation, you have they have all the online things that it just makes it easy to kind of a menu choice of pulling for your lesson. going forward.
Well, we
you
do
know,
have that. We just have it created ourselves. So that there is varied resources for,
and
remediation.
where are they pulled from? Are they pulled from?
Instructional software that we have, and then the AAS program has their own. There's also differentiated lessons in each of the units, along with differentiated assessments.
Okay.
You're more
Thank
than welcome to look at these units if you'd like.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
No
Matthew?
problem.
Mr. Bauman?
Thank you, Mr. Picarillo. This is more of a statement. I mean, watching it, thank you for that presentation.
Absolutely.
Watching it, I just started feeling really proud of us as a district and our teachers. I mean, we just got through. We did it. Like, we came out the other side, and I think you guys and the teachers and the kids, we made a lot of progress. And I love it seems like the teachers are involved in all this.
Mhm.
And I hope that's true, because as a teacher myself, I don't like being told what to do. I like to teach that I know what to teach in my classrooms. I know how to teach my students. And the phrase voice and choice, I hope that's true, to its very core. I hope that teachers really truly are getting a say in all this and not just being told.
Well, I think, and kind of getting a feeling of a common theme, but we also offer curriculum writing for every single one of
Sure.
these units,
And I
right?
see that on the email.
So every teacher is a part of said curriculum. I don't have time to sit and create units and say, you shall teach this unit,
Sure.
Nor would I want to, because I'm really not that great in math. But we do, I probably shouldn't say that, but it just is what it is. But we work hard to ensure that the teachers are part of all of the curriculum writing. Obviously, through the pandemic, we didn't have as much subs, so we had to think out of the box, and we did so over the summertime, after school, or what have you. But all of our teachers are paid curriculum writers. They join us in that. Even our AIS math or AIS reading teachers are a part of re-looking at workbooks that we've created to see if there's a part of anything that needs to be changed. So I would hope that our teachers would say that they are a part. Now, whether or not they want to sign up themselves, that's up to them. We don't force people to sign up.
Sure.
But just like all of our new electives right now at the high school, those are all being written by our own teachers. We do not just go out and purchase a program and say, here you go, you're going to have it. So everything is created by our staff.
Thank you.
Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hines. Great
Of course.
presentation. Thank you, Dr. Pelletieri. Two questions. First, look, a lot of work's been done in the last 5 years. Good work. We're moving forward. And I don't know if you have the answer tonight, but what's the next 5 years look like, right?
I could
So-
make
so
you a
how do we
5-year
think-
plan
how
if
do we
you'd like.
Think about that.
Yeah.
And how do we start talking about what's the next 3 to 5 years look like? And is that a presentation that we can get sometime in the future?
I think that was what I was really
Some-
alluding to, my
yes.
recommendation that as a district, and this is a major thing, right? We created somewhat of a strategic plan back in 2017. And Mr. Scavo, you were actually on the board then too. It's time for us to really dive deep and look back and say, all right, so now what are the next steps with our plan? And is our vision the same that we have? And it needs to again be in the involvement of students and staff and board members. So my recommendation was to do that through our curriculum council, but we can do it however we want. But it is time for us to think about the next 5 years. I agree.
That's great.
You were going to say something else?
No, go ahead.
Just reflecting, when Tri-State came in and met with us, and this is a group that came here before I got here, and we reflected on all those things we have done during the pandemic, before, and still going forward. It's like you step back like, wow, like I have great pride in that. And I can't wait to get started in that work and to look at this vision for the next 3 to 5 years and present that to this community.
Yep. Great. And then just the second part really ties to what you just said, right? And you talked about the stuff here with surveys, right? We do some parent surveys. Have we considered doing surveys on different levels, right? Student survey.
Yeah.
Do we give them a survey in the beginning of the year? What's your expectations for the year? But then in June, do we do an exit survey? Did we meet their expectations? It's almost, we talked about data. This is good data points. And as you know, I like to make decisions on data, right? We've talked about that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But again, not only students, but perhaps from the teachers as well, the staff as well. Again,
We-
it's just really feeling what's happening at their level, right? And I think we
Mhm.
could get some good data out of the
Mhm.
students. Did we meet their expectations? What are the things that they want to see going forward as well?
I think it's really important too that we have a greater understanding of what a graduate of or a profile of a graduate is.
Mhm.
Like, what do we want a student to look like when they leave here? Whether they're going into college or career, or they've left a BOCES program. We don't really have a common vision around that. We have a few visions, but that really should be a part of the process as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Isernia?
Okay, so I'm not a professional educator like some of my colleagues on the board here. So you'll have to indulge me if I
problem.
miss something. So as a community member, I look at our K through 5 education as really the teachers are providing that foundation for this student. They're molding this student, getting them ready. You know, if we lay the right foundation, they have a better chance of being successful as they move into middle school and then up to high school. And what I didn't hear in everything that we were just talking about is, you know, we're very blessed here in the fact that our size is so large, right?
Mhm.
It's our size is an asset because you're calibrating the curriculum K through 5, but yet you're giving free leeway for our teachers to teach them to the best of their ability. You're not telling them how to teach it, right? So
We kind of own the curriculum, right? Which
Right.
they craft, and we say,
Right.
this is the curriculum, and we're all going to equity-based deliver this curriculum, but you're going to deliver it your way. I'm sure Matthew delivers his curriculum very different perhaps than someone else, but it's the curriculum being taught in their way.
right. And I think that's really another benefit of our size, right? And when you say it's not our administration's curriculum, we're saying that we're crafting it together as a group. Mr. Barbera's people, yourselves, have put it together, and then we send it out to 10 different buildings, and teachers teach it across the way, right? So the asset is we actually have 10 little laboratories, right, teaching the same curriculum. But what I didn't hear was, and again, this is not the educator, right?
Sure.
This is the business person says, well, now I have a great sampling, right? That I have a baseline of a curriculum, and I have all these different people teaching it at 10 different sites. What I didn't hear was, what's the mechanism? Because I would say that if you looked at that, you could see there are some buildings that may be struggling in a certain area, where some buildings are very
Right.
successful in another area.
Yes, I can help you with that.
So,
Yep.
you know, as you want to push the achievement level up, and the way to do that is take the areas of the buildings that are achieving high in areas and take those lessons learned and push those or suggest those or move those to the other buildings that are struggling in those areas. That's the mechanism. I didn't hear that mechanism.
Yeah,
What's-
I
So
can actually give
we're-
a live sample of
Okay.
that. Go ahead, Erin. You go first.
So a part of our data team meetings, and even prior to the pandemic, we really conducted instructional rounds or like walkthroughs. Sometimes I do them informally, sometimes we do them as a team, just to kind of touch base and see how people are doing and feeling in the classrooms, and how people are delivering curriculum resources that they need, if they need more classroom libraries. And I'm just talking on the elementary right now, but we do it middle school, high school as well. But it also gives us an opportunity to say, wow, Mrs. Jones is delivering this amazing blah, blah, blah lesson. And, you know, we are at the point now where we want to give time for teachers to visit one another and or be those model classrooms for us to, if they so choose, either welcome people in or for us to tape those model lessons to share. Because you don't always need a consultant, right? Like a consultant's there for like the first time with fresh eyes, new ideas. But at some point you have to own it yourself, and you want your community of teachers and staff to really own that. So that's our next level, is now that we have consistent programming, you know, there's autonomy in how you deliver that, the books that you're going to do with that. But then how do we gauge, is it working? Is it successful? And who's doing tremendous things in their classrooms so that we can share that out? And that's where we're at. Those are starting to open up now that said COVID hopefully is waning, have more subs, more opportunities for people to visit one another.
So I'm going to follow up on that, and I'm going to give a shout out now. Today I met a gentleman down at Tamarack, Ken
Kuvak.
Mhm. So, oh my gosh, right? So to your point, Mr. Isernia, we started talking about some data that we had. He already had created these quadrants that he dug deeper into even where we've gone with this data. I created these quadrants. Well, it's created for, but he found it. He's the one that came across. He's like, these have quadrants of low achievement, low growth, high achievement, high growth. I want to get my kids here. I made these color-coded charts that I'm sharing with the staff in the building, and we're going to be able to share this information, and we're meeting on individual kids, and I'm doing this with math, and we're embedding these practices. So that's the type of thing like that's happening in that fourth grade at a particular school that Aaron and I looked at each other and already said, well, I'm going to get this guy to come to our ILT meeting, our instructional leadership team meeting. And he's going to present exactly what he built here at Tamarack. And we're going to share this out in our other buildings. And you're going to see that kind of exponential growth that we're seeing there to start to spread everywhere. And so, like you said, we have these little labs everywhere. And that's a place where that lab is kind of exploding. And we're going to grab that guy and use, and Allison was there as well, fantastic staff down there. We're going to use them in terms of trying to spread the wealth, so to speak, in those pockets where we see incredible off the chart success.
Well, and that's what I was driving at. That's the mechanism I was talking about. I don't think personally we need a consultant to tell us how to teach. I think between our teachers and ourselves, we could figure out what's the best way to teach our children to achieve the highest success. I'm not knocking consultants, but the private business person in me, we don't really like them.
Yeah, they're not there to show us how to teach.
Right.
We have master teachers all over. I know
We
we
do.
celebrate Miss Parenti, but I know walking through the hallways, the buildings, we have pockets everywhere, and when we talk about labs, every building has its own strengths, and it's amazing to see when you go in, right? Each culture is a little bit different, but there's so much. A consultant is never chosen. First of all, I don't choose consultants. Whenever we're looking at something, we have a team of either our instructional chairs or teachers that meet those consultants, and then we identify who that person's going to be. So I don't ever say, okay, we're going to have Mrs. So-and-so come in and she's going to teach you how to do X, Y, and Z. We usually have some sort of like a small committee that meets those people. It might be 2 or 3, and then we make the choice of who it is. But it's really about something that they're doing that's cool instructionally that we want to bring, and we don't know enough about it. But eventually they go, and they have to go. And so that's why we hope at some point to bring back our own literacy coaches, math coaches, positions that we had in the past. Because as a teacher, and I get it, when I was a teacher, I didn't want to talk to my principal about my small group instruction for reading. I wanted to talk to my colleague, and I wanted to go to those classrooms. And so that's the next level when we talk about the next 5 years. I feel like for any of us knowing this, the Manhattan New School is that mecca of instructional technology, literacy, math instruction in the city. That's really a laboratory for excellence in teaching because they help one another. And I happen to think that Sachem is right on that precipice of being able to do that. Now that we have consistent programming, we have the things that we've always wanted, now we can dive deeper.
Emily Kang, great
Emily
example
Kang, she's
of
here
a
for
science
science,
consultant.
and
right,
the
that comes
science
there, worked at
department
a high
chose
school.
her. They brought her to us and said, we think this woman's wonderful. And so here
She
she's
is.
been with us.
Yep.
She's fantastic. And she's talking about, I'm sure Mr. Rivera, right? You saw her. She's talking everything about phenomena. She doesn't tell the science teachers how to teach. She's showing them, you could probably talk about it better than me, Phil, but it's those people that come in and just share their expertise a little bit.
Well, I think I meant it in the sense of consultants as in an area of expertise is one thing, but a consultant to come in and tell our teachers how to teach is not
Sure,
what
of
we
course.
need.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
right, of course.
That's right.
Yeah.
I just don't want to lose the leverage that we have in our size, right? The leverage of our size is that we internally can figure out what's the best strengths.
Always,
So-
always. Yes.
We need to take advantage of that. That's what I was really driving at.
Thank you. I appreciate that because you lent to the next 5 years exactly what we're hoping to do. So thank you.
Private industry guys, so we're not educators, right? So.
Mrs. Slattery, please.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
No problem,
Hines.
yeah,
And
sure.
Over here.
I was in curriculum council before here, so a couple of
No.
things that came out of there. So again, Sabrina, to your point, when 2017 on curriculum council, when we were rolling out the change, a lot of teachers that were there and parents and really everybody were like, this is never going to work. That we can't just not buy Pearson and teach it. How is it going to work? It was a struggle in the beginning. So after this presentation, I asked the elementary principals who were there, What is your feedback from teachers now? I know then it was not good. What is going on now in your buildings? So they said the math in the beginning was extremely difficult, but now that teachers have seen the success of students, they're actually buying in. They're actually believing in this program. They're buying in. And what was very successful was the writing workshop that happened in September. And there was great feedback across all the buildings, across all the teachers, and the data teams coming in and showing progress and everything. So yes, it was a big struggle in the beginning. And I said, let us know, is it still a struggle? Anytime something new is a struggle. But again, with the social studies, as we had discussed, the curriculum was 15 years old. So you can't keep teaching 15-year-old curriculum in history when it doesn't apply now. So that had to be changed. And a lot of the things, so like Pearson that we were using at the time was 10 years dated at the time we switched in 2017. So again, a lot of that, and I know there's going to be a lot of struggles, and it's not easy for anybody. I think the dashboard that was created, I think that might help parents, it might help teachers, and it's going to be a constantly evolving thing. But I was very happy to hear from 2 building principals that as tough as it was in the beginning, they're now seeing success in students. And that's what's carrying the buy-in of more people. And was there something else? So again, it's something different that teachers had to get used to, not just opening a book and going chapter 1, 2, 3, 4 along those lines. And it's something very different, but it's coming. Anytime change happens, it's going to be different. And then just another thing regarding whole child, SEL, DEI, that also was discussed in curriculum council, because again, those seem to be very bad words in our community. And just because Monday was,
National Autism Awareness.
thank you.
Yeah.
I was trying to get it. So Monday was World Down Syndrome Day 2022. And for this year, they're asking, what does inclusion mean? That's what they're putting out to everybody. What does inclusion mean? As a parent of a special ed student that graduated Sachem, what inclusion meant for my son was a seat at the lunch table with his peers, being a part of a sports team and getting to play on the field. Taking a stage in a drama production with Gen Ed students and having that experience, hanging out with his friends at friendlies, which now grows into him holding a full-time job in our community and being included in happy hours at, Flanagan's or different things like that. So when we talk about inclusion and people make that a negative, I just want everybody to understand that in my world, inclusion is a positive, not just for my son, but for everybody that interacted with him and had that opportunity to know that just because somebody is different doesn't mean they can't achieve the same goals as somebody else. So I just think when these things are discussed, as we discussed in curriculum, we need to make sure people know the positive things that are coming out of it. Thank you.
Mr. Scavo, please, no, please, Scott. Yep.
I just to make it clear, I believe we should be moving forward. I think all of this is great. My concern is just too much at once, the overwhelming. Being a teacher, you have how many prep periods? Yeah, then, beyond the school day, teachers tend to work. And again, I just want to make sure that the rollout and the support is there, but we do have to move forward. And I even know sometimes as myself as a teacher, there's a reluctancy at first, like, but I'm doing all this works, and I get it. But I just want, sometimes when you're sitting there and you're getting this thrown at you, this like a new Lion's Quest, a new writing program, and then all of a sudden you have 10 new things on your desk that you're trying to go through. you want to make sure you're doing it at the proper pace so that what we're giving to our students is an awesome product. That's
totally
my
agree.
concern. So we need to move forward. I love this and thank you. I hope I just,
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah. Oh,
no,
refocusing.
no.
I don't want you to think I'm like attacking. I'm
No.
just thinking as an educator, getting all of these at once, if I just have to throw math math is a little bit more settled because it's been there for a while, but throwing in a new social studies and then all of a sudden just putting together a lesson to get it out there, what level of effectiveness and what's the quality of that lesson? So I just want to make sure that we're giving the professional development, the time, the growth, the time for teachers from different buildings to connect, utilizing our principal aides. We have the STEM and the humanities that they're meeting, like Quebec's one of those, correct? I believe.
Yes.
So that he's speaking to teachers in all the other elementary buildings, just making sure that we're, the quality is there, that we're not just throwing things and, throwing things together just to get out a social studies lesson, that we're really taking feedback and we're giving out quality lessons to our students. And I think it's all wonderful stuff.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind, because we look at the stuff, this is great, and then you'll have a teacher sitting at their desk like this, like, I have 10 million things to plan, and then are we giving quality? And we want to make sure that what's happening in every building is not necessarily the same thing, but at least that they're all getting that same basis put out there and in a
Yeah, absolutely understood. Like I said, I
Totally
was,
agree.
I was,
didn't mean it that way. Yeah. But that's why I asked, if there were, there were no teachers today, but there were like the social workers, psychologists,
yep, elementary counselors.
and the elementary counselors. I wish there were teachers that I could have
Yeah,
said,
today a few people couldn't
how
come today.
is it, especially elementary, like you said? 'Cause
I think we're
that is-
always trying to find opportunities for communication, and that's really what it boils down to, right? I mean, especially over the past 2 years, certainly there's been some heated arguments back and forth, but we're finally at a point where we can focus on instruction. And tomorrow we're meeting with our teacher leaders to do exactly what you're saying. And a survey will go out like we send out every year for everyone else that isn't involved in that meeting. And I think that's all we can do is just let each other know. A teacher leader wrote me yesterday or the day before about the social studies. Let's have a conversation about it. Until we know, then we don't know. So I think the key is always about communication and not being afraid to approach each other, and certainly making opportunities for that.
So if I could just end this piece here really quickly. One of the things I said before I left the buildings today, each building I go in, is how can we better support you, this school? And I said it to the principal and the team that's there. That's one of the things that I always say. And when I first arrived, I heard some scuttlebutt about math, and I had said to Erin at one point, "What do you want to take a look at the math program? Maybe we should take a look at that." And she said, "If you want to get in my car and I'll drive you back to Rockville Center, we could do that." Because the math,
I don't think I
we
actually said
finally
that.
just got, you didn't maybe exactly say that, but we finally just got to a point where we're okay. So leave that alone. We'll talk about some other things. But to your point, we can't just keep adding. We recognize, I'm really thoughtful of that. I really feel like I'm a teacher at heart. I try to keep that in my heart and in my head as well, and don't want to overwhelm people without a doubt.
Mr. Scavo.
Just to piggyback on what Sabrina was saying, I know we've had some conversations, and change is good, but change too often is not good, because as a teacher, it takes sometimes a couple of years to really fine tune a lesson and provide materials and be able to do it. And when you finally get it all done, okay, you don't want to find out that a new social studies curriculum is coming in or a new math curriculum is coming in, and everything you've just done the last 4 years of implementation is now being changed. I'm teaching 30 years, and one of the things that I find very important is that, look, I want to solicit feedback from my students. I think it's very, very important. At the end of the year, I actually do a survey of me. What did you like about my curriculum? These are the modules. Which ones did you like the best? Which ones didn't you like at all? Okay, why didn't you like them? Okay, because sometimes, like I said, I'm looking at it through one lens. I'm looking at it through the teacher's lens, but I'm not looking at it through the student's lens. And it's important to gather feedback. And I know you mentioned that, there's data teams and, and all of those, elementary, and those data teams, what is the, what do they, who they comprise, what comprises a data team? Like,
Sure.
what's the makeup of the data team?
So it's the building administrators. All the directors are invited, usually myself and Chris. Sometimes Patty comes as well. Any of their PAs or their teacher leaders as well. and what would be considered like their IST teams. So anybody who looks at student data in terms of if anyone is not doing, well enough on grade level. So sometimes there'll be a school psychologist or a social worker or an elementary counselor. It depends on what we're looking at. If we're at the secondary level, it might be a department chair as well.
Yeah. So that data that's gathered, I mean, how is that shared with the instructional staff as to, this is not working, we want to move in this direction?
Yes.
It is. Now, their feedback, how is their feedback taken? I mean, it is.
You'd have to ask each principal because they're the ones that are that
so
lead
it's
those
more of a
conversations.
building
Yep.
level meeting.
Yeah.
We come in and we model it from the district perspective.
Yeah, we come in kind of that helicopter approach. We
Mhm.
view it, we work with them on it, and then the idea, as we left today, Cayuga, right? We said, okay,
Yeah.
so what are the next steps in terms of disseminating this information with your school community, your staff?
Right. So, and I just want to, be clear though, that there's nothing new. These are programs that we've had for the past 5 years that we've been implementing. The only thing that is new-ish is Putnam BOCES, but we've always had Putnam BOCES. We just always had it as a resource, where now we said, let's look at this as a common foundational curriculum, because the one that we were using mostly was very old and antiquated, as Ms. Slattery said.
Mhm.
But I don't want to give the misnomer that we're making changes. There has been no changes over the past 5 years other than when we were implementing the program at that year.
Mhm.
So the only thing that's new this year is that social studies kind of, because we've said, let's use this as the focal point of our social studies, but you're talking three to 4 units for the year. So this isn't, something, it's more integrated in what they're doing in their reader and writers workshop.
That was one of my questions. I know, Dr. Peltier, you mentioned it as a resource, okay, and then it was
Mhm.
mentioned as curriculum. Is it a resource or a curriculum?
So that's a great question, because that's
I
our
look at it as
discussion
one and the
and
same, to be
our
honest with
debate.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what it is I think it currently is a resource that we are crafting into a curriculum, and that's an important point, and that's something that we need to. We're going to do some summer curriculum writing. That's what I was talking with Marie about today, in terms of making sure that, again, looking at the state standards, because the state changes the standards. A few years ago, they changed the social studies standards, and I went all the way down to elementary. That's when we have to make change, when the state changes. So the state changed its standards. We've had to then change. We were following textbooks. At one point this year, we used some textbooks that we decided we weren't going to use anymore. And we decided to transform what it was that we were doing and utilize this resource more as a curriculum. So we need to finalize that piece and make sure we nail that down. That's what we're doing now. We'll continue those conversations. That will happen this summer as well.
I think we also have to make sure too that at the heart of the conversation, I mean, being a teacher myself for many years and then an administrator, is we really need to focus on the students though, right? So we want to make sure that we give as much professional development, as much as asked for, continues. But at the end of the day, like, we have very different students that are coming into our schools that have an expectation of learning that is more engaging and more involved and more with depth. And so change is difficult, but I think that we've not run. We've taken our time over the past 5 years to really offer that. But we have very different students coming in. They want to see technology. They want to see different programs. They want to see more engaging. And so as that work continues now into our secondary schools, you're going to have students going into the middle school and high school who are expecting a program of excellence.
Yeah.
So we have to balance that. And I think we said it earlier before too. We're all professionals, educators here, but we also have some families that are working 2 and 3 jobs here in Sachem, and they don't have time to ask those questions about, is this the best program? And I think that we have to be the best advocate for what we want our students to have, what we would want our own kids to have. And I think that we work with our teachers and our administrators to the best of our ability to say, what do you think? And sometimes that's why we have to ask for fresh eyes outside who might be doing best practice we haven't heard of before. But I am proud of the work that we're doing, and we'll keep doing that little steps each year.
I mean, I think what's going on is positive. Some concerns I have, obviously, is that we don't ever want to take the autonomy away from the classroom.
Sure, of course.
We don't want to, I would not want to be told, here, this is the curriculum. When I look at my curriculum, I know this is what's going on in college. I want to make students college and career ready. In my particular program, I teach CTE. So I'll look at a curriculum that a college is using and say, well, how could I transition this student into this college smoothly? How could I, if the student doesn't want to go to college, how could I transition that student into, into the world of work smoothly, so they have the skill set to be able to be successful. I would never want my employer to ever say, here, I want you to teach this. And and I know that you said that, stakeholders, you reach out to all stakeholders, solicit feedback. Moving forward, the teacher's going to create their own curriculum. That's some of the things you
No, the
said
teachers have created. They always
They
create their
create
own
their own
curriculum.
curriculum.
Yes.
Okay.
No one hands a curriculum and says, here you go. Everything is created by our staff, except for Lions Quest. But that was actually adopted through our curriculum council and our wellness committee.
But we purchased the math workshop.
No, we created that
We created that ourselves.
Mhm.
But
by every grade level, teachers on those grade levels.
the science curriculum,
The science curriculum was adopted and identified by our teachers.
this is purchasing the last 2 science lab units.
Mhm.
Is that something that we're purchasing from?
That is one of our vendor
Lions Quest.
programs. Yes, that and Lions Quest.
So the other thing, and I'll close with this, 'cause I know this conversation is very, very, very long. Going back to gathering information from our staff,
Mhm.
I think what's very, very important is to see what's working. I would like to see maybe a survey down the road and say, look, what's working, what's not. If it's not working, how can we improve it?
Well, we do send that every year. So we always send out a professional development survey,
Well, not a
which
professional
asks
develop-
about,
yeah,
no,
I'm
but
not-
if I can just answer, it also talks about our programs as well.
Yeah.
So the professional
We-
development you got,
Yeah, we get professional development surveys too. Which of the professional development classes did you like the best? I'm talking about a survey that says, all right, we've implemented Putnam Bosse's social studies. What's working there? What's spectacular? What's not? If it's not working, what can we do to improve it? And I think, feedback from our teaching staff is invaluable. And I think that, we need to, if we're going to include community and we're going to include students, I know Vinny said, so listen, we have to include our educational staff in those surveys, so
yeah, I'm just, are you hearing feedback that we don't ask our teachers in terms of feedback or curriculum writing?
I'm not hearing direct feedback that we're not, but I'm also not seeing what the pros and cons are, what's working, what's not working.
Well,
Like
we
Vinny
just started
said,
to unveil it, so we can certainly share with you, feedback that we're hearing. If you hear any, as you've been sharing tonight. I'm sorry?
You just started unveiling the surveys or the curriculum?
No, I'm talking about when we continue on in terms of looking at the curriculum together. We can certainly share with you in the future any feedback that, we gather about it with our teachers who are
I
involved.
think that would be important. I think that's something that, looking at the whole picture, what's working, what's not.
Yep, we want everyone at the table, and we want to hear from everyone. So I think that's something that we strive to do and will definitely build.
Thank you.
Mr. Bauman.
Just a quick question. Do we have a mentor program for the teachers? Like new
Yes, we do. We have a formal one, which goes through Ms. Keeple Eden's office and.
Is that
Stacey's
only
office, right?
for non-tenured? Or is it for anyone that you deem needs it or wants it or?
So we have a formal New York State mentoring program under the New York State Department of Education. Anyone who holds an initial certification who's new
Right.
in the certification process is required to have a mentor, and we implement that throughout the district for all new hires who are in that category. We also have unofficial mentors that all of our teaching staff and administrators in the building really make sure for our employee retention and support that they have the resources they need.
Mhm.
It's built in. It's what's wonderful about it is that we don't have just one teacher. So you're not coming in as a speech and language pathologist and thinking I am the sole person. You have the folks who are in your building, you have the folks who are in your department, and there's cross discussion. So we have unofficial and official. And when I was an assistant principal over at North, one of my responsibilities was to lead the new teacher meetings. And we had presentations, we had teacher leaders demonstrating pearls of wisdom and sharing, all of those things about what they have done, what they do, as well as other support staff sharing, what they're doing to support their colleagues.
Well, hopefully we could use that mentoring to replace like the observations for tenured teachers, which is such
Oh,
a useless practice. Anybody can put on a show for 41 minutes.
I would
Mike,
say
I
we
just
agree with that.
was that
It's a little
I said
editorial there.
sorry, I'm just whatever. Mike, I was just teaching. I just want to make this clear. Teaching is not a science, not a cookie cutter science. It's an art. So you could tell, you could tell the curriculum, you can present it to the teacher, but no teacher's going to teach it the same way. Do you know what I'm trying to say? No. I just want to make sure that that's. I want to make sure that's good. That's all. So like, yeah. So I'll teach the same thing another teacher will teach, but I'll use different methods, and it's not always going to look the same. That's all. I just
Yeah, no, you're good,
For your
Mr.
non-
Isom.
Yeah,
Yep,
I
yep,
thought I said that was the benefit of the size that we.
And then we look at it, we
Every-
actually say, wow, what's going on in Bounds? Because it's unbelievable. The kids are through the roof. And then we try to replicate that maybe somewhere else.
Well,
I
But
didn't
we're not
say that
gonna
was
go in
good.
there
I just said.
we won't go in there and say, you have to do what this guy did in there. It's because it won't work the same. It doesn't often work the same.
No, I didn't.
But we
I
do
didn't.
look for those pearls.
But was I next?
You are next also.
So
Can I say one thing quickly? Wow, it's a long meeting. I'm sorry. That's
but
not
we're
what I meant
talking
to
about
say. I know, isn't
instruction.
that
I'm
amazing?
so
We spent over an
excited.
hour on this.
this is all good.
How
stuff.
many new teachers do we have in the audience right now still who've been with us this whole time?
Oh,
1, 2,
yay.
3. Look at this.
That's right. That's
So-
right.
Aren't you excited to join us?
This is actually an incredible meeting for you to be at.
Can we talk about masks, please?
You did it. You did it. I'm turning off my mic.
I was just gonna, when you mentioned the building data teams, and you mentioned that you go and you go and you let the principal is part of that team, and that to me that kind of leads into what I was talking about. I mean, that's the kind of information that building data team that you two should be at your level now should see. Hey, this building's struggling in this area, but we were over at this other building last week and they were really doing well in that area. That's the mechanism. That's the area where that should funnel up to you guys and be passed back down and try to move those good lessons learned. That's what I was asking. Is that
That's
happening?
exactly what the purpose is twofold, right? To look at students down to the granular level, but to also look at our strengths and weaknesses across our buildings
Right.
and how we can help one another.
My apologies. I thought you meant. I apologize. I thought you meant they should teach it the same way.
No. In fact, our strength is that they don't.
Make it
Our
clear.
strength-
Mike
our strength is
Esternia
that they
did
don't.
not say that.
I didn't say that.
No, he did not say that it should be
Oh.
taught the same.
I'm still blown
Getting
away
late for
by.
Matthew.
I'm still blown away by Pelletari's go-to seed is the basil.
You guys good? Anyone else? Mrs. Hines, Dr. Pelletieri, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving us that opportunity and that time. Yes, very exciting conversation.
Letter F on page 2 is approval of minutes for the March 9th, 2022 regular meeting. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Slattery, seconded by Mr. Isernia. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We do have one speaker for the agenda portion. Mrs. DeSimone, please. And before you can come up, please. From now on, it's important and imperative that everybody fills out the yellow card accurately and fully. We did have an issue a couple of weeks ago where the person was not a community member. I'm going to take full blame for it. I didn't read the card and it wasn't filled out properly. So we have to do more to ensure that it's only our taxpayers and community members and staff speaking at our meetings. Please. Can you just pull it towards you? Just push it. Is the light on, the little yellow light? Good.
Hi, I wanted to ask that. Is that actually a written policy that the person has to be in the district? If
Yes,
so,
it's in
can I-
it's in the policy.
Okay. Can I be provided with that? I have
Yeah.
no problem. I mean, I'm in the district.
We
I
can,
got two
we
kids
can,
in
and
the
it's also on the website, but we can get you a copy of it.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, I have to say, this was a very, very impressive meeting today. I'm so happy and like Mr. Baumann said, encouraged, and I feel a new sense of hope that we are going to, like Dr. Pelletieri said, refocus on the children and instruction and education. It's a relief. It's a relief to know that this is our focus now. So that's wonderful. And I came to talk about the budget, and I do have a question. But Ms. Hines, I must say, I have a new, not that I didn't before, but I have a newfound respect for the work that you do, that what it encompasses, your presentation today. Though I'm sure you weren't the only one to try to gather it together, the scope of the knowledge. I am leaving here today with a much more in-depth understanding of how the continuum of education is planned for, what it took to get to this point, and how it will be moving forward. Good points about that as well. I'm a parent struggling with a third grader trying to do math, and it's a big struggle. But why do they have to do that? Well, because now I know in seventh grade they're going to be doing this, and in eighth grade they're going to be doing this. it doesn't make my struggle easier, but there's an understanding. And I think that in understanding where we're trying to go, it's helpful. It's helpful. Great presentation. And I'd like to also mention, Ms. Slattery, when you spoke about inclusion, that did move me because I read these things. Every time I come in, I reread them. And this part that says the best and wisest parent wants for his own child, that must the community want for all of its children. And any other ideal for our schools is narrow and unlovely. Acted upon, it destroys our democracy. I believe that. And when you include everybody, it not only helps that child at the time, but it helps our society because moving forward, that child will become a productive member of society and contribute in their own way, like all children can in their own way. So great meeting. I really loved it. And everybody had something worthwhile and worthy to say in this part of the conversation, the business people and the educators and the teachers. Great. This is what it should be about. Now, my question, which is about the budget. I don't understand much about it, and I'm trying to. But you spoke of taking things from a reserve fund and a rainy day fund and using them for these things. I don't have a question about that specifically, but I don't understand how that fund is even there. Where does that come from? Is every year money taken and putting into that fund to keep it at a certain level? Because Ms. Slattery had a good point. If we're always pulling from the, I'm trying to budget myself, as a single mother with 2 children living in
Yeah,
this
so
district.
you
It's hard.
think of a family that's got a budgeting system with, say envelopes. You've got an envelope for the mortgage, you got an envelope for vacations, an envelope for going to dinner, whatever the case is. Fund balance is just simply stated, we have revenues that come in, we have expenditures, and if we don't spend all the money that came in, at the end, we have fund balance. If we spend all the money that came in and more, then we have a problem. That's when we end up upside down. So when you have surplus at the end of the year, state law allows us to place those monies in those various envelopes.
So it comes from a surplus from the year before.
Correct.
So that anything is in there, we're not budgeting to put money into our reserve the following year. It's money that we haven't used.
Yeah, so
in
since
the current year.
2015, obviously, gap elimination adjustment ended, we hit bottom, and since then, over the last 6 years, we've been coming up slowly and incrementally, adding back to those envelopes each year, so that if we had a large workers' comp expense in one year, we got the money for it. If we have a lot of retirements in one year, we have the money for it. If there's a big increase in employer contributions for the retirement system, there's money for it. Those are restricted reserves that can only be used for those purposes. The last envelope
What earmarks it
is,
as a restricted into that
Mrs.
envelope?
DeSimone, your 3 minutes is up. I'm going to ask if it's okay. If
Yeah.
you can email Mr. O'Keefe, I'm sure he'd
I
be
can help
happy
you
to
out with it.
answer every and all of your questions about the budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
No
you.
problem, anytime.
I like the envelope, right? And that really made it kind of granular. Yeah, thank you, John.
On the bottom of page 2 is number 3, business items, consent agenda A through F. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Pikowitz, seconded by Mr. Isernia. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. On page 6, towards the top, is personnel teachers, consent agenda A through N. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Slattery, seconded by Mr. Baumann. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried, please.
Okay, on tonight's agenda, we are recognizing Mrs. Susan Shella, who is a teacher assistant who has had just under 32 years working as a teacher assistant across our various schools. The majority of her time was in the middle schools, but she's retiring now from Grundy Elementary School with just under 32 years. We would like to thank her for her dedication and her service to our Sachem students and everything that she's done to help and support them. Also in
Thank
our
you.
audience,
Let's pause for 1 second and just applaud her. Thank you.
Also in our audience, we have a host of new employees who are onboarding for instruction for next year. They are coming into areas such as technology, business, world language, family consumer science, as well as mathematics. These are not easy positions to fill. And the folks that we have with us tonight, which are from the outside with years of service, folks who are graduating and coming to us in their first job, or folks who have been through the Sachem schools. We'd like to recognize you all today. Thank you for coming and being a part of this meeting, and congratulate you on becoming part of our Sachem family, and look forward to great things. Congrats.
Kristen, I think Haley out there is still in college, right?
Yes, she is. We
She's
like to catch them while we
I
can.
spoke to her yesterday. She's still student teaching, right? I'm not embarrassing you at all. You're not turning red at all. But she was like, she's not even out of college yet, right, Haley? You're still in high school? Wow, we really need teachers. We're hiring high school kids now. Say that again. Okay. Yeah, we scooped you up. That's what I said to her yesterday. We scooped her up before she could even finish the program. Who's that next to you, Haley? Your mom? Hi, Mom. I love when moms come, and dads and everyone else. That's great. You happy, Haley? I didn't embarrass you at all, right? You're still coming, right? Okay. I see our Italian teacher, our Spanish teacher, business. We met I met some great people over this past week. Really, I was really proud. I spoke to several of them one-on-one in my office. And one of the things I said to them, I always ask our new employees, our kids learn a lot from you, in terms of science, math, social studies, but there's a famous saying that kids will learn more from who you are than what you know. And I always ask them, what will our kids learn from you besides science and Spanish and math and technology? And a couple of people immediately, first word they said to me was empathy. And that really struck a chord with me, because I really want to hear that in our employees, that we can really think about what it's like to be sitting in that chair and what we're going through, and our colleagues, and having empathy for our colleagues and our peers as well. Really important that we teach this world really about empathy. So I love that we're bringing people on board and found people that are going to be like, empathy is like way up there, along with their science and their technology and their Italian and Spanish and everything else that we have. Fantastic. And business, really important. Thank you, Kristen.
And that came through a group effort from our directors, from our chair people, from our principals, everyone who reviewed and interviewed and saw folks in action in the demos. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I meant to ask a question. So I see a lot of these homework club approvals. So it's going through, I don't know if I missed something. I know I came late. I know I missed something today. I know that you talked about, so it's official going through,
Yes.
starting. Great, awesome.
Obviously, as you can see, it just lays out a little bit differently depending on who took it at each of the buildings, but we are. We were hoping to run it, I think, more towards like around February, but just, push comes to shove, we're finally starting. But yes, we're looking forward to that. And
That's great. Awesome.
On the top of page 14 is number 5, personnel support staff, consent agenda A through E. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Scavo, seconded by Mr. Isonia. Any questions? All in favor? I'm hungry. He was talking about Skittles before, and now you guys can also please feel free to walk out quietly and go home. You don't have to stay for us. Yeah, we will not hold it against you. It's getting late. You're student teaching tomorrow. Some of you have work, school. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Good night, guys. Thank you for coming. Yeah. On the bottom of page 15 is contracts, consent agenda A through C. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Isonia, seconded by Mr. Scavo. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 7 is letter A. Finally, the approval of proposed 2022-2023 calendar. Can I have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Pickowitz, seconded by Mr. Baumann. Any questions? Yes.
Chris, when we developed this calendar, is this calendar based on the East and Suffolk Post-East calendar?
Where's Julie from? Is it she East and Suffolk?
That's
Yes.
where it comes from?
Yep.
Because I noticed this year that the calendars from East and Suffolk and West Suffolk are different.
Yeah, yeah.
And the problem that poses that if you have a teacher with young children that lives in Lindenhurst or lives in, Farmingdale, it creates a problem. And I'm wondering if at some point we get all the BOCES, superintendents together and say, hey, look, we align this so that we're not running into an issue where we now have to bring in 20 subs because teachers have to stay home because they happen to live in Western Suffolk and their youngsters are off that week. So, yeah, it's so the first week in April we're off. Second week in April, I mean, I'm fortunate I could leave my kids home. They're going to be 15, but a teacher that has 4-year-olds, they can't. It creates a problem. So, just something.
No, that makes a ton of sense, Mr. Scavo.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. On the top of page 17, number 8 is Committee on Special Education, Consent Agenda A through B. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Mrs. Pickowitz. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 9 is a policy review. It's a first reading for policy 8300 in the identification cards. Any questions, comments? Okay. Number 10 is monthly reports. Anybody? Please, Laura.
Okay, so as Dr. Pelletieri said before, we had our legislative forum on Wednesday. So I would like to thank all the members of our legislative committee. We had 3 short months to plan a forum, and we pulled it off, did it, and it was excellent. I would like to thank my Mr. Reynolds, who was the board liaison with me. Ms. Pickowitz, who was our PTA liaison, our entire administration, who all came and supported the event. Thank you so much. PTA council, who provided a moderator and support. Our district clerk, Allison Florio, who went above and beyond in so many ways. I can't even thank you enough. Mr. Render, our IT guy who set up, IT person who set up the live streaming for us. And of course, our elected officials, Assemblyman Doug Smith, Legislator Anthony Piccarello, Suffolk County Comptroller John Kennedy, who came for his wife Leslie Kennedy, who is my local legislator, and then the legislator aides from Nick Caracapa's office, Assemblyman DiStefano's office, thank you, and from Angie Carpenter's ISLIP supervisor. She sent somebody from the Youth Bureau. For anybody who hasn't tuned in, it's on our YouTube, and everything was discussed from the pothole situation across Long Island and what's being done about it to DEI and how that is being addressed in workplaces and across our government, to COVID funding and what can be done and what they're looking to do with it, the importance of mental health and funding it through our federal governments, and mandates. And I think it was very informative and very rewarding for those of us who worked to bring it together. Mr. Scavo, thank you for coming to support it. This was the first year that we undertook that. It had been done in the past, but now there's new people on, and we're going to have a wrap-up meeting next week so we could send thank yous to everybody who participated, talk about what worked, what didn't work, and next year we'll have a longer time to plan. So we hopefully will get more of the elected officials to come and more community support, because it really was a wonderful event and there was a lot of information shared with all of us. So again, Kristen, who is here, who's on our legislative committee, thank you so much. And to everybody else, it was really wonderful, and I appreciate all the support that was given. Thank you so much.
Hey, Laura, I just first thank you too, but I think I saw it. Wasn't Dana, New York State PTA, wasn't Dana Plate in there too? Didn't she help? I didn't hear you mention it. Oh, she wasn't there in the front row? Who was sitting in the front row? The only person I could see in the video.
No, what happened with PTA council, so that's going to be one of the things. PTA Council is running their, Sabrina, help me, trivia night or Battle of the Buildings. Thank you so much. So they really couldn't help us with this. So they provided the moderator, who we greatly appreciated. Mr. Phil Siegel came and he moderated. Sabrina was the board liaison for the PTA Council, but they had never helped in the past. Dana was on it as a community member, not as a PTA member. So in the future, that'll be one of the things that we'll look to change. But it was a great event, and I would like to even have some of our students come into our legislative committee meetings to see what questions they would ask. Like, we got very interesting questions from the community, but I would like to also reach out to students and have them have some input too into it. But it was great. Everybody that came, you know, it was like the Doug, Anthony, John Kennedy show. But they did great and they answered all the questions, and it was really a wonderful event.
I thought it also really profiled the different responsibilities at different levels of government, because as they were answering questions, like, well, you know, that's not really something for me, that's for Doug. And that's,
Right,
I just thought that was an interesting, well, I
Yes.
didn't want to say we were doing this, but rightfully so. If you
Right.
civics, you would realize that certain levels of government do certain things, right? And that was well displayed in that, because I got Doug was at the center there, but.
Right. Yes, but it was a great learning experience.
Yeah, there was.
Does anyone else have any updates as far as a committee? Okay. Our second part, number 11, our second portion of public comment, Mrs. Dukas, please. Just make sure that little light is on. please.
Yeah, we're good.
Good.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Alex, I know that you mentioned this just before, but I just wanted to touch on the public comment policy at our board meetings. At the last board meeting, there was a speaker who in one breath told our Board of Education members that they shouldn't allow anyone to speak about politics. But then in the next breath, they handed out reading material and continued to speak on her own personal political beliefs. So if you're going to do this, I think that you should have a vested interest in the districts. Any Sachem resident, whether you're 5 or 95, has a First Amendment right to freedom of speech. That being said, our district's public comment policy specifically states that taxpayers, community citizens, school personnel, and school students may openly express themselves. So I know that there are people who have made it their side job to travel to school board meetings throughout Long Island to push their own political beliefs, and for people to use various school district board meetings as their platform to spread their own ideologies and claim they are from different towns each time, to me, verifies a clear agenda. So to that point, I just hope that the district is doing their due diligence to abide by the policies that they've created. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are no board discussion items for tonight. Does anybody, I know that Vinny had mentioned a future one as far as a new plan for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, if that's something, I know it's going to take some time to put
Yep.
together, but yeah. Just one comment about what Ms. Dukas just said, and I've seen this at other board meetings. I know they fill out the card, but should we have them actually state what their address is?
Well, it says it on the card. You mean
But
when they say it?
sit down, just their name and their address. I don't know if there's privacy issues or not, but I've seen other boards that do that, to say, here they are and here's their address. So at least they're on record what their address is. So
Yeah,
just-
Chris,
just
I've
a
seen
thought.
that
I don't know,
elsewhere,
Chris, if
right?
there's
Mr.
any legal
Venator, have you seen that?
ramifications.
Yeah, I see it all over the place. Most districts say state your name and your address.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly permissible.
Okay, so maybe that's a practice we should look at
Yeah.
to avoid things like this, because again, some meetings you're getting a ton of these things, and to go through them, I know there's a lot, but just let them state it, and then maybe it alleviates some of this, right?
Is there, I mean, is not that, my only issue is that doesn't stop it from
I don't know if
people
we're gonna be
lying.
able
They
to
can write
validate
1,
right
2,
now.
3 Holbrook Road from
Right.
Holbrook, and I don't know, is it, how do we instantaneously make sure that they are? Do we, I mean, this is going to be a hot button, but can we check their ID as they let in their yellow card?
Well, I don't see any districts going that far. I think
Okay.
there's a certain amount of honor system that comes into play. And then, if there's a situation where there's some reason to call into question that honor system, then I think you check on it. But I have never seen a district go that far. I don't really recommend it for you.
Okay.
But at least having them state their name
Yep.
and address.
And if there's any question, then you follow up with it.
And maybe what school they're associated with elementary. I don't know, just trying to think checks and balances.
Is
We
that
can
something that
talk
maybe
through it.
that we would have to update our policy, put it
Perhaps.
in writing and make it an official part of the policy?
No, I think that's you're just procedurally, enforcing the policy. You're required to be, in part, either a district resident or a community member. So procedurally, you can invoke something like stake your address in order for us to be able to enforce our own policy. So I don't think you need to put it in your policy in order to have it as a procedural component.
So at the outset, we'd ask Mr. Picarello to just say, please state your name when you come up and your address.
Why wouldn't we be able to check their ID?
I don't know that you can. I'm just questioning whether or not you want to. Why
So
wouldn't we want to?
Well, you're not going to catch them the first time, right? You're going to catch them the second time.
I'm no lawyer, so I don't want to, but I'm just saying, why would that be such a big deal?
I'm not saying legally you can't do it. I'm just.
Like when they hand the card to Miss Floria, can I see your ID? I mean, we have to show our ID to get into the building. We have to show our ID to, I
Maybe
think
that's a
we
way-
should do that.
Maybe that's a different way to, so from a
'Cause I-
privacy perspective. so we should think through it, I guess.
I've sat through board meetings in other districts where people come up to the podium and say, no, I'm not giving you my address. Because some of the topics are so contentious that they don't want to visit to their house and find
That's
out
an important
their
point.
cars were egged
Yeah.
or the windows were broken.
Right, they may
So
not want to give
I
us
would- I
public.
would
Adds
say-
on to something with maybe
Yeah.
some ID or something.
I would be careful about, if we're going to do addresses, then we need to block that sound out when they give.
No,
the
but I don't
address.
think they should give it publicly. I think
Yeah.
they should give it to Allison.
Yeah, I mean, a license maybe, or some type of ID card as proof, I would be okay with that, but I'd be concerned about how contentious some of the subjects and topics get that
Yeah.
you all of a sudden.
That's why I brought up the idea.
Yeah, but to that point, we wouldn't let these people that she was explaining, Ms. Dugas was explaining, if they're going around the island pushing their political views, that would eliminate that.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I think, Mr.
Yeah,
Kiernan, please.
Yeah, Alex, I think if you just made that knowledge before the visitor section, that you must be a resident to come up here. Now, somebody comes up here and is not a resident, I found in my experience, they'll let us know out there. They'll
Yeah.
say, wait a minute.
And
that's
that's
somebody-
what happened in this last instance. that-
Yeah, so I don't think we have to go too far with this. I think if you make the announcement, most of us know the people that come up here. And certainly the people that come to every meeting, they know the people that come up here. So maybe somebody slips through the cracks, but I don't think it's a major problem.
And my sense is, as Mr. Venator said, it's kind of an after the fact type of thing that you'd follow up on, and then we'd have the yellow card. It does have the address. We could follow up then and then reach out and say, look, it came to our attention. You're really not a community member, and therefore we won't be allowing you to speak in future board meetings.
The other thing too is maybe putting on that yellow card, something that says, are you a resident? Because you could have a Ronkonkoma address and still go to Connect Line. You don't know where the lines are, So I would say, look, if we catch you in a line, the next time around, you're not going to speak. End the conversation.
We could perhaps put there's a checkbox on here. Ready? I wish to address the board on this matter, or whatever like that. We could put I am a Sachem resident. I am a Sachem School District resident, and they're checking the box. So it's in essence verifying. And then if in fact we find out afterwards that that's not the case, then we'd have to seek some remedy. In other words, they wouldn't be permitted to speak again.
Allison, is there a thing through eSchool or whatever that we're using that you are able to type in the name and it comes right up, or the address, and that name pops up when people give you the card?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a way too.
And we'll
Anyone
try
else?
different best
Yeah,
practices.
we just don't want that.
But
I
we
mean,
won't ask then,
It just caused
therefore.
contention, and I didn't know about it until after it all happened. So that's
We're not going to, let's just clearly state, we're not going to ask necessarily for them to state their address at the beginning. In
Yeah.
terms, Mr. Scarborough's point, I think is well taken.
Yeah. Anyone else? The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be April 13th, 2022 at 7 PM right here in the Samoset Annex. Can I please have a motion and a second to discuss collective negotiations and an upcoming business contract? Motion by Mrs. Slattery, seconded by Mr. Scavo. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
And then under policy.
Have it, like I can screen it.
Yeah. Ron, you collecting these things again?